Chapter 392. Let's Wrestle! Accompanied by a burst of unusually happy laughter, a seemingly weak arm extended towards Wu-Ming. However, this arm gave Wu-Ming a very dangerous feeling. If I'm caught by this arm, I'll be finished even if I don't die. Wu-Ming was shocked. In an instant, the blonde lady grabbed Wu-Ming and fiercely threw Wu-Ming over her shoulder. Boom! Wu-Ming's body slammed into the ground. The ground around Wu-Ming cracked and made a loud noise. Ah, it's a substitute. The blonde lady let go of Wu-Ming, who had fallen to the ground. Then, Wu-Ming, who had been thrown to the ground by the blonde lady, changed. At a speed visible to the naked eye, Wu-Ming's body turned into wood. Using his clothes as a medium, Wu-Ming successfully escaped Quizzer's fatal fall. I don't dare to be caught by that move of yours. Even if my durability is B grade, I wouldn't dare to try. At this time, Wu-Ming's voice came from behind the blonde lady. After all, it would be troublesome if he died. The blonde lady turned her head and saw Wu-Ming standing not far away, unharmed. His upper body was naked. Oh, you've taken off all your clothes as soon as we meet. It really makes me a little embarrassed. The blonde lady said happily without any embarrassment. Because the density of magic in the dense forest was too high, and the blonde lady was too fast, Wu-Ming did not notice her approach until he saw her. Now, Wu-Ming looked seriously at the blonde lady who was exposed in front of him. Wu-Ming felt a high level of divinity from her. In this case, presumably, this goddess was not lying. With such a high level of divinity, no one could impersonate her except a god of the main god level. She was probably the Quetzalcoatl. You must be the feathered serpent god. Wu-Ming did not beat around the bush. That's right, big sister, I am the Quetzalcoatl. You can call me Quetzalcoatl, the Uruk Hyunryong. Quetzalcoatl smiled at Wu-Ming. Although Wu-Ming was a little surprised by the feathered serpent god's gender, he could still accept it. After all, there were so many examples. It seems that the pterosaurs outside the rainforest were controlled by you. Coupled with the greeting gift just now, it really surprised me. Wu-Ming said with a smile. After all, I don't really want to see you, Uruk Hyunryong. In an instant, Quizzer's face looked as if she had put on a performance that transcended the horizon. She was abnormally terrified. Looking at Quetzalcoatl, who looked more like an evil god than a good god, Wu-Ming was very calm. I want to know about the Three Goddesses Alliance and your respective goals. That's why I'm here. Wu-Ming acted as if he did not see Quetzalcoatl's performance, and asked directly. Also, the residents of Aidu told me that a man is offered as a sacrifice to you every day. I want to know what's going on. However, Quetzalcoatl smiled. Didn't I say, Uruk Hyunryong, I don't welcome your arrival. If you leave now, I can let bygones be bygones. But if you continue to stay, I'll have to use my super wrestling skills. Quetzalcoatl's smile reached her ears as she looked at Wu-Ming with an abnormally terrifying expression. I understand. Wu-Ming closed his eyes, looking as if he had understood. Wu-Ming opened his eyes abruptly and said seriously, Then, let's have a fight. The winner will listen to the loser. Whether it's killing, trampling, enslaving, or toying with the loser, it's all up to you. How about it? Oh, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I accept, big sister. Quetzalcoatl instantly cancelled her performance and reverted to her loving big sister appearance, agreeing to Wu-Ming's suggestion. Then, in less than a few seconds, Quetzalcoatl used her performance again and smiled maliciously at Wu-Ming. In that case, you'd better be prepared to die, Hyunryong. Then, as if he had achieved his goal, Wu-Ming's lips curled up into a smile. With this, the contract is established. As soon as Wu-Ming finished speaking, the sound of chains could be heard. Clatter, what? The shimmering golden chains wrapped around Quetzalcoatl, causing her to cry out in surprise. Quetzalcoatl looked at the center of the cracked ground behind her. The pristine white robe seemed to be worn by an invisible person, hovering above the ground like a ghost. Several chains shot out from the robe and extended to Quetzalcoatl's body. The chains that bound Quetzalcoatl came from this robe. Without a doubt, this was the doing of her enemy, Hyunryong. "You bastard! How dare you sneak attack me?" Quizzard glared at Wuming as if she was being treated unfairly. Little did she know that she was the one who had started the sneak attack. "I've already said that the contract is established. From then on, our battle will begin. Why, is Lord Quetzalcoatl going back on your word?" Wuming crossed his arms and looked at Quetzalcoatl with a smile. "You despicable bastard! Watch me break these chains." Quetzalcoatl displayed her irritable yen-e and said rather angrily. Then, she began to struggle in vain. "By the way, let me tell you something. As long as you're a god, you can forget about breaking free after being bound by this chain. Even if Tiamat came, she wouldn't be able to break free either," Wuming said rather arrogantly. Quetzalcoatl ignored Wuming and struggled to break free of the chains. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not break free from the shackles of the golden chains. That was not all. Quetzalcoatl found that her magical power, divine power, and other powers were all bound by these golden chains and could not be used at all. "Damn it! Where the hell did you get these chains from? Not only can I not break free, but my powers are also sealed. Even the Enkidu isn't this perverted." Quetzalcoatl gave up on struggling and said irritably, "What? You're not going to struggle anymore?" Wuming laughed. Of course, Quetzalcoatl could not break free of the Enkidu. The Enkidu was something used to control the god of law, so it was impossible for Quetzalcoatl, who had extremely high divinity, to break free. If it was the original version of Enkidu, Quizzard would still be able to break free from the shackles of Enkidu by relying on his own attributes, but only by a little. Her strength had not reached A rank, so it was impossible for her to break free of the Enkidu's shackles through pure strength. Moreover, Wuming's Enkidu was the manifestation of the Enkidu that was attached to the main body of the great origin, Wuming. Once a god like Quetzalcoatl was trapped by the Enkidu that was no longer what it used to be. With the current Enkidu's ability, even Tiamat would not be able to do anything about it. I've failed. I admit defeat. You win. Can you let go of me now?" Quetzalcoatl removed her facial expression and revealed the look of a big sister again. She smiled gently and looked at Wuming. And so, the battle between Hyunryong and the feathered serpent god ended with Hyunryong insta-killing the feathered serpent god. After hearing Quetzalcoatl admit defeat, Wuming released the shackles of the Enkidu on Quetzalcoatl. Then, let's start with the questions. Chapter 393. Wuming was not worried that Quetzalcoatl would go back on her word, because the agreement between Wuming and Quizzard would be upheld by the world. Most importantly, this was the end of the gods' era, and both Wuming and Quizzard were gods, so there was no need for them to sign any contract. They only needed to make a verbal agreement. Both Quizzard and Wuming were well aware of this, so Quizzard directly admitted defeat and let Wuming untie. Wuming did not hesitate in the slightest. "So, what do you want to ask?" Quizzard asked casually. Quizzard, who had become Wuming's slave, was not worried that Wuming would do anything to her. She looked very relaxed. "Then let's talk about the disappearance of men in Aidu first. After all, if Quizzard was really the feathered serpent god, then the disappearance of men would become a point of suspicion. After all, the feathered serpent god hated living sacrifices. They, of course, are wrestling with me," Quizzard said matter-of-factly. "Because none of them can take a single hit from me, I chose to have the residents of Aidu sacrifice a man every day. They are all resting in my temple now, and when they have recovered, they will wrestle with me." Quizzard looked rather distressed that no one was wrestling with her. Ugh! Wuming did not expect that Quizzard would ask the residents of Aidu to sacrifice a man every day just to have someone to wrestle with. Although Wuming did not know much about wrestling, Quizzer seemed to have used wrestling techniques when she attacked Wuming at the beginning. How much did she like wrestling? Wuming remembered that the feathered serpent god did not seem to have any wrestling attribute. How did her hobby of wrestling come to be? Seriously, it's rare that you don't fall, but you can't live on? Wu Ming helplessly covered his face. Of course, wrestling is a religion. If possible, I want to become the god of wrestling. Quizzer did not have the slightest bit of self-awareness. Instead, he wanted to become the god of wrestling. Next question. What is your relationship with the mother of magical beasts in the north, Tiamat? Wu Ming asked. After all, one of the two pillar goddesses was in the south and the other was in the north. One was waging a war against the magical beasts, while the other was secretly expanding her territory. Wu Ming didn't believe that the two of them had nothing to do with each other. How could it be so coincidental that they were doing it at the same time? Ah, you've really hit the nail on the head. Quizhar smiled in surprise. I'm in an alliance with them, Quizhar said. After a while, Quizhar told Wu Ming everything. The mastermind had set up the Holy Grail at this singularity and used it as a medium to summon himself and Tiamat in the north. He left a message that whoever obtained the Uruk's Holy Grail first would become the new goddess of this era and control the fate of this era. Therefore, the two pillar goddesses competed separately. Tiamat started from the north, while Quizhar started from the south. One kept producing magical beasts, crushing the northern cities with their numbers and pushing towards the south. The other relied on the concealment of the dense forest and the rapid and fatal attacks of the magical beasts in the north as cover. Quizhar slowly expanded towards the north. The goal of the two pillar goddesses was the Uruk in the middle of Mesopotamia because the Holy Grail they were fighting for was in Gilgamesh's hands. However, compared to Tiamat, who was producing magical beasts and killing humans, Quizhar was much milder. After all, I still quite like humans. This was Quizhar's statement. The protection that Quizhar mentioned was true. She loved humans from the bottom of her heart. Therefore, her method was to occupy the Uruk and obtain the Holy Grail from Gilgamesh to become the new goddess of this era. Therefore, with the protection of the pterosaur, no humans in Quizhar's territory were killed by magical beasts that came out of nowhere. This was especially so for wrestling. Although those who wrestled with Quizhar were covered in wounds, they did not die. Moreover, Quizhar would provide them with treatment and water to survive. Other than exchanging a few blows with Quizhar every day, the rest of the time was quite comfortable. At the very least, their lives were not in danger. Why do I feel like a gigolo? Wu Ming complained in his heart. Tiamat and Quizhar established an alliance to conquer the Uruk together. At the same time, they also established a contract. No one was to hinder the other, attack the other, or harm the other. Once this contract was broken, one would receive a backlash from the world. It could be said that the damage would be doubled for those of the same level. Perhaps, the moment before they attacked, they would be killed by the heavenly punishment of breaking the oath. However, a new goddess appeared not long ago, Quizhar said. The new goddess also knew that she would become the goddess of the new era if she obtained the Holy Grail. Therefore, she also wanted to cooperate with Tiamat and Quizhar and join their alliance. However, in reality, although it was called cooperation and joining the alliance, it was actually just joining a contract with the other goddesses not to harm each other. After all, it would be terrible if Tiamat and Quizhar joined forces to deal with her. Because this goddess was the last to join, and because of her uniqueness, she was not assigned any offensive task. Instead, she was in a standby state. In other words, the three goddesses are in an alliance. Wu Ming pondered over Quizhar's words. He did not suspect that Quizhar was lying. She could not lie because of the restrictions of the contract. That's right. It's the situation of the three goddesses fighting for themselves in the alliance. Quizhar smiled. So, who is the third goddess? Wu Ming asked. After all, the contents of the three goddesses' contract did not state that they could not disclose information about the other goddesses. Therefore, it was fine for Quizhar to reveal information to Wuming. It's the native goddess of Mesopotamia, the mistress of the underworld, Ereshkigal, Quizhar said the goddess name. It's her? Wuming was a little shocked. Wuming finally understood why the third goddess was not assigned an offensive task. Ereshkigal was born to manage the underworld. No god liked to manage it, and she could not leave the underworld for the rest of her life. She could only stay in the underworld. Therefore, Ereshkigal could not attack the Uruk on land. However, because Ereshkigal could not leave the shackles of the underworld, she had more powerful authority. Even if she was in the underworld, she was invincible. No god or human who came to the underworld could resist her. Even if she could not be on land, Ereshkigal could still operate from below the city. She could pull the souls of humans on the ground into the underworld in an instant. This created a terrifying scene. The bodies of humans were cold in their sleep, and the entire city became a ghost town. This is really useful information. Wuming nodded. This trip was not a waste. Since you have no intention of killing humans, how about we stop here? Wuming looked at Quizhar. If he could solve the problem of Quizhar before she was in danger, Wuming's trip from the Uruk to the extreme south was not in vain. Chapter 394. Apart from that, Wuming had another idea. After all, Quizhar was also a goddess. Even if she could not attack the other pillar goddesses, she could still keep the other goddesses in check. She could also deal with the magical beasts. After all, Quizhar was already doing that. She was protecting the people in her territory from the magical beasts. After all, the restriction of the contract was that he could not attack the goddess. Therefore, Wuming wanted to rope Quizhar into his side. Wuming believed that with Quizhar's addition, the Uruk side would be like a tiger that had grown wings. Even if it did not work, it would be fine as long as Quizhar did not expand her territory and attack the Uruk. Sure, Quizhar said with a smile. You agreed so decisively? Wuming was a little surprised. After all, I was defeated. Even if it was a sneak attack, I would still admit defeat. That's what it means to be inferior. Looking at Quizhar like this, Wuming could not help but think of the legend of the feathered serpent god. Due to being drunk by other gods with ulterior motives, the country under her rule was ruined by the other gods. After the feathered serpent god woke up, she blamed herself for her mistake and decided to leave this place to reflect on herself. In other words, the feathered serpent god was a god who accepted defeat and admitted defeat. Judging from this point, the feathered serpent god was really a good god. However, in the eyes of humans, she was still a strange god. If you want to contribute a man every day, you should make it clear. If it's just wrestling, it's not a big deal. You can also let them go home. They can come over and wrestle with you every day. You can also hold a wrestling tournament and train these people who don't know how to wrestle. That's too unbecoming of a goddess, Quizhar responded to Wuming with a smile. In that case, let these men go. I'll ask King Gilgamesh. You can hold a wrestling tournament and train these people to wrestle. I'll show them to you. For people who loved wrestling, it was good to be able to watch an exciting wrestling competition. Yes, you win. You have the final say. Quizhar waved her hand, indicating that she agreed with Wuming's words. Wuming looked at the regretful Quizhar and pondered for a moment before speaking. If it's wrestling, I can actually play along with you. After all, it's more interesting if the opponent is a god of the same level, isn't it? Wuming smiled. After all, Wuming and Quizhar had only exchanged a few blows before Quizhar was bound by Wuming's Enkidu. There was no fight at all. It wasn't just Quizhar. In fact, Wuming also felt rather regretful. His opponent was the legendary feathered serpent god. If he didn't fight, he would be letting down this fated encounter. Really? Good. Let's wrestle first. Quizhar was overjoyed and rushed towards Wuming. Hey, wait. I'm not talking about now. Come, come. I'll be very gentle. Dong. Wu-Ming walked out of the temple's jungle strangely. Funbaba, who was waiting outside, was lying there obediently. Woo-woo, seeing Wu-Ming come out, Funbaba cried out in joy. She sat up and rubbed her upper body against Wu-Ming. Yo, Funbaba. Wu-Ming greeted Funbaba, who was once again rubbing against him enthusiastically. However, Wu-Ming's movements were slightly stiff. Woo-woo? Funbaba tilted her head in confusion. It's okay, I've already solved the feathered serpent god's problem. It's just that I was chatting with the feathered serpent god just now and she was a little excited. Wu-Ming said with a fake smile. Thinking of Wu-Ming just now, Wu-Ming felt helpless. Because he had aroused Quizhar's fighting spirit, no matter how Wu-Ming persuaded her, she couldn't calm down. Therefore, Wu-Ming fought with Quizhar. Then, it turned out that Wu-Ming really didn't know how to wrestle and was repeatedly thrown by Quizhar. Wu-Ming always felt that this was Quizhar's revenge for him using Enkidu to plot against Quizhar. She didn't show any mercy at all. Fortunately, Wu-Ming's own martial arts skills were good. After learning Quizhar's wrestling skills, he successfully made a scene with Quizhar. As a result, the jungle and even the land around the temple seemed to have been ravaged by a storm. Ah, what a good fall! I didn't even dare to use my strength against a human. Indeed, it's more comfortable to fall against a god of the same level. This was Quizhar's face full of joy after the incident. In that case, I'll go make arrangements for the pterosaur first. I'll send all the men in my temple back to Eric Metropolis. Then, Quizhar entered the temple and Wu-Ming walked out. Wu-Ming smiled at Funbaba and touched his lower back. This guy really can't be merciful. Ouch, 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 ouch. Wu-Ming touched his lower back that was injured by Quizhar's fall and said with some pain in his heart. By the way, where did the leopard man go? After all, Wu-Ming had initially left the leopard man to Funbaba to deal with. Now, Funbaba was lying here and resting comfortably. Then, where did the leopard man go? Woo-woo, Funbaba indicated that he didn't slack off and then pointed to his butt with his head. Then, Funbaba lifted his butt and left this position. Then, what appeared in front of Wu-Ming was a long cylindrical object that was constantly squirming. It seemed to be a person entangled in vines. After squirming twice and feeling that the thing pressing down on him was gone, a head popped out from the long cylindrical vine. Unsurprisingly, this was the leopard man's head with the jacket. The person in the vine was the leopard man. Damn it! How dare you press the honorable leopard man under your butt? I don't think I'll forgive you. The leopard man, who only had his head exposed, roared frantically and kept squirming his body that was tied in the vines. He looked like he would rather die than submit. Looking at the leopard man like this, Wu-Ming remembered what Quizhar said. When Wu-Ming wrestled with Quizhar, he asked her what was the relationship between the leopard man and her. Ah, that leopard, you can play with him as you wish, just don't kill him, Quizhar said with a smile. When he thought of Quizhar's words, Wu-Ming wanted to laugh. This leopard is really pitiful. Then, Wu-Ming had the heart to tease the leopard. Did you know? Quizarcoatl told me that your meat is of the highest quality among the gods. As a friendly meeting between us two gods, she gave you to me. Wu-Ming squatted down and looked at the leopard man, who was in a daze. Eh? In other words, you're my slave. By the way, I haven't eaten the meat of a god before. I'm in for a treat today. Wu-Ming looked at the leopard man with a smile, but this smile looked like the smile of a demon no matter how you looked at it. How is that possible? How could Cooker betray me? You must be lying. The leopard man said, somewhat shaken. Oh, is that so? Then do you need me to prove it to you personally? With that, Wu-Ming stood up, and then a flame and a knife appeared in his hand, as if he was really going to cook the leopard man. Wu-Ming looked down at the leopard man condescendingly. Wait a minute. Don't eat me, my meat isn't delicious at all. The leopard man's face was pale, and he was so scared that his eyes rolled back. That's not up to you. Help! Cooker! Chapter 395. Wuming and Funbaba left Aidu. Wuming told the residents of Aidu the truth and promised that the Quetzalcoatl god would return the males who were sacrificed as sacrifices. He also promised that the residents of Aidu would be able to go out and interact with other cities. However, in exchange for their protection, a wrestling tournament would be held every once in a while. Naturally, the residents of Eidolon agreed wholeheartedly. If they could obtain the protection of a god just by doing this, it would be a win-win situation. Now, the residents of Aidu were relieved. After all, even if they were safe, it was still quite uncomfortable to not be able to rest in peace. Wuming also warned Quetzalcoatl not to continue spreading the jungle. Thus, Uar City, which was supposed to be Wuming's next target, was not swallowed by Quetzalcoatl's jungle. If possible, he also hoped that Quetzalcoatl would send out the pterosaur to eliminate the lone magical beasts that somehow came to the south. Quetzalcoatl naturally agreed. After that, Wuming and Funbaba began their journey back to Uruk. At the same time, Wuming also told the mayor of Uar City about the feathered serpent god. After that, because Wuming slightly neglected Funbaba and the magical beasts' attacks in the north were not that strong, Wuming decided to ride on Funbaba and have a good chat with Funbaba before returning to Uruk. Because of the journey, Wuming and Funbaba arrived at the wilderness near the Persian Gulf. It was now nighttime. Wuming sat in front of a fire. A pot floated above the fire. Wuming leaned against Funbaba's huge and soft body and drank a bowl of meat soup with a satisfied expression. Not far from him was the corpse of a magical beast. It was a magical beast that Wuming encountered along the way. It was ambushing passers-by and was killed by Wuming and made into meat soup. After all, no one said that magical beasts could not be made into food. I'm starting to miss that adventure. Wuming held a bowl of broth and recalled the days when he had just returned from the demonic realm, where he had learned from Skaha and was training alone outside. During that period of time, Wuming was like a chivalrous hero. When he was tired, he would use the sky as his blanket and the earth as his bed. When he was hungry, he would pick wild fruits and hunt animals. When he was thirsty, he would drink spring water or dew before heading to Connaught. In Wuming's eyes, Skaha was more like a teacher than a warrior. Not only did he teach Wuming combat and magic, but he also taught Wuming some principles of being a human being and all kinds of small knowledge. After all, Wuming was an old lady who had lived for a long time. Cough, cough, queen. Naturally, she knew a lot after living for a long time. In addition, Skaha saw Wuming as his younger brother, so she taught him a lot. That included survival in the wild. However, it was not very useful for Wuming. Therefore, Wuming had never fallen sick and could sleep anywhere. On the other hand, Wuming's stomach was beyond the stomach of a fantasy breed and could not digest anything. Therefore, survival skills in the wild were just icing on the cake. Paying attention to the dangers in the wild was a lifelong benefit for Wuming. After all, even the most powerful person would make mistakes one day. Even the most powerful tiger would take a nap. Now, Wuming had Funbaba by his side. With Funbaba's divine beast temperament, no wild beasts or robbers came to attack Wuming. As for those who were related to God, they were only followers and dependent. For example, Wuming and Funbaba, Quizzer and the pterosaur, Tiamat and the magical beast. However, if there was really an attack, Wuming would not be afraid. After all, he had the strength. Although Wuming did not need to sleep, it was rare to spend a night in the wild. Wuming did not want to spend it all on the road. Moreover, the one who would be tired was Funbaba. Therefore, Wuming was going to stay in the wild with Funbaba for a night. You think so too, Funbaba? Woo-woo, Funbaba also cried, indicating that it also agreed. It was the wish of every Funbaba to be able to sleep with its master. After drinking the broth, Wuming tidied up and then went to sleep with Funbaba. After that, Wuming began to dream. He had a strange dream. Wuming came to a black abyss. It was as if he had fallen into a swamp. Wuming's movements were particularly difficult, and he could not see anything clearly. Only a sad song echoed. Wuming could feel the sadness in this song. A mother was helpless and sad to be abandoned by her children. Wuming could not help but be attracted by this song. He gradually looked for the owner of the song in the dark space, trying to drive his body back to his mother's arms. At this moment, Wuming heard Funbaba's cry, and then he was awakened. Woo woo! Wuming suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the bright sky. His head was a little dizzy as he looked around. Funbaba put down its foreleg that hit Wuming's head, and then rubbed its head against Wuming's head. Its originally anxious appearance calmed down. Wuming didn't know if it was because he was hit by Funbaba or because of the dream, but now his head was quite dizzy, as if he didn't sleep well. That was definitely not a dream, Wuming said with some fear. If it wasn't for Funbaba hitting Wuming hard, I'm afraid that Wuming would really fall into the arms of the owner of the song, and once that happened Wuming had a hunch that he would never wake up again. After all, his consciousness was transferred from his main body to his servant's body. If his consciousness was captured, then Wuming's servant's body would disappear, and his main body in the root would become an empty shell with only a body and soul, but no consciousness. Simply put, he would be in a vegetative state. Thank you, Funbaba. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid I would have died this time. You've helped me a lot, Wuming said to Funbaba gratefully. Woo-woo, because of being praised by Wuming, Funbaba happily rubbed against Wuming. Wuming touched Funbaba's head and thought thoughtfully. I've never encountered such a situation before. It seems that I have to protect this point. Wuming's body, soul, and consciousness were all born from the root, and compared to the body, Wuming's soul was more powerful. Simply put, negative mental effects such as charm would not work on Wuming. But this time, Wuming almost fell into the enemy's trap while sleeping. More importantly, the pitch-black, immovable space was the interior of the origin black soil. For some reason, Wuming couldn't feel the root of the black mud in his dream at all. Maybe it was the enemy's trick. There's also that singing voice. Wuming did not recognize it even in his dream. Wuming had heard that singing voice before. It was the singing voice he heard when he crossed over to the mirror world in Ilya's world. This familiar feeling. Wuming was silent. For a moment Wuming shook his head. In short, the enemy is not simply the three goddesses' alliance. There are more powerful enemies in the dark. As long as it has something to do with the black mud, it can't be underestimated. This time, Wuming almost fell into the trap of the song. Sorry, Funbaba, things have changed again. I have to fly back to the Uruk. You come back first, Wuming said to Funbaba. Woo-woo, although somewhat reluctant, Funbaba still knew that something unusual had just happened, so it nodded. Then, Funbaba turned into a white spear and integrated into Wuming's body. Then, Wuming transformed into a huge flying dragon and flew to the Uruk. After Wuming left, a sad song sounded on the surface of the Persian Gulf, but it disappeared instantly like an illusion. Chapter 396. After leaving the vicinity of the Persian Gulf, Wuming did not delay any further. He flapped his wings and flew all the way to Uruk in less than an hour. Wuming's wings made a whistling sound. Then, Wuming slowly landed in front of the Uruk city gate. Sir Hyunryong, you're back. The soldiers guarding the city respectfully greeted the giant dragon in front of them, which was comparable to half of the Uruk city. Gilgamesh had already informed the people of Hyunryong's arrival, so the soldiers guarding the gate were not surprised by Wuming's arrival. Wuming nodded and transformed into his human form. He did not communicate too much with the soldiers. Wuming directly went to the Tower of God at the fastest speed. After all, if he was entangled with the Uruk residents, he would not be able to get away for a while. After arriving at the Tower of God, Wuming happened to meet Siduri, who was walking down the Tower of God. It seemed that Siduri was Gilgamesh's assistant, helping Gilgamesh deal with government affairs. Therefore, it was not strange to meet Chief Priest Siduri in the Tower of God. "Sir Hyunryong, you're back." Siduri bowed slightly and greeted Wuming. "Oh, it's Siduri. How is it? Is your body all right?" Wuming asked with concern. After all, it was because of him that Siduri's vitality was reduced. "It's no longer a big problem. I'm really sorry, Sir Hyunryong. As your priest, not only did I not help you, but I also caused you trouble. Siduri really deserves to die." Siduri shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Then, Siduri began to blame herself again. It had to be said that Siduri was a little too respectful to Wuming. Before Wuming left here, Siduri was also like this. She was clearly told not to be too respectful, but Siduri still believed that she should treat God with respect. Especially Hyunryong, who protected the Uruk and allowed the Uruk to develop. Especially after Enkidu's death, Siduri replaced Enkidu as Wuming's personal priest. In Siduri's opinion, she could not be compared to Enkidu at all. This thought made Siduri respect Wuming even more. In addition, not long after Siduri became Wuming's priest, Wuming left the Uruk. This made Siduri have an illusion that, did I disappoint Hyunryong and leave the Uruk? All of this made Siduri respect Wuming very much. "Siduri, I don't like humans being too respectful to God. This includes myself." Wuming instantly looked at Siduri seriously. Siduri also remembered what Wuming said to Siduri after she became Hyunryong's priest. The reason why Hyunryong protected humans was because he hoped that humans would not have to rely on other gods and gradually become independent. There was no need to treat gods as high and mighty beings. It was okay to have an appropriate amount of respect, but too much respect was wrong. Yes, I'm very sorry, Lord Hyunryong." Siduri became even more respectful and was about to kneel down. "I say, you don't have to be so respectful to me." Wuming did not know whether to laugh or cry as he supported Siduri, who had not completely knelt down. "Yes, Lord Hyunryong," Siduri said sadly. "That's why you can't become Enkidu." Wuming's words shocked Siduri. She felt as nervous as when the teacher found out that she was copying homework. Her heart began to waver. Yes, Siduri knew that it was because of Enkidu that she was able to serve Hyunryong better now that Enkidu had left. "But this is Siduri, isn't it?" Wuming looked at Siduri with a smile, then let go of her and walked towards the god's tower. Siduri remained in a half-kneeling position as she stood rooted to the ground. "I am myself." Siduri thought about Wuming's words and said meaningfully. Wuming came to the top floor of the god's tower and walked directly into the room on the top floor. "Oh, you're back, Hyunryong." Gilgamesh put down the clay tablet in his hand and looked at Wuming, who walked in. "Yes, I encountered a lot of things in the south," Wuming said tiredly. "This king can guess from your tired face. Tell this king the good news first." Gilgamesh smiled and said to Wuming, "Other than Tiamat in the north, there are two other pillar goddesses. They are the Quetzalcoatl of Central and South America and the goddess of the underworld of Mesopotamia. They also have the intention of attacking the Uruk. For this reason, the three pillar goddesses have formed the Three Goddesses Alliance." Wuming sat on the chair beside Gilgamesh and reported his news. "This king wants the good news, Hyunryong." Gilgamesh was a little unhappy. Gilgamesh also saw that Wuming deliberately kept him in suspense. Well, good news must be set off by bad news. Next is the good news. Wuming waved his hand and smiled mischievously. Tiamat is only active in the north. With the obstruction of the servants, there is no big problem for the time being. Ereshkigal is unable to leave the underworld and was pushed to the east by the other two pillar goddesses. For the time being, there is no sign of an attack. Wuming took out the map and pointed to the demonic beasts in the north and the remote areas in the east. As for the Quetzalcoatl in the south, she used the dense forest to protect the city and nibbled away Mesopotamia little by little. Then, Wuming pointed to Eric Metropolis in the south. About this king has just received news from UR City. Eric Metropolis is surrounded by dense forest and can no longer be contacted. Gilgamesh said. It seems that the news from UR City has just reached Uruk. But fortunately, when the enemy only occupied Eric Metropolis and did not have time to approach UR City, I broke into the temple of the Quetzalcoatl and made a bet with the Quetzalcoatl and won. Wuming smiled and looked at Gilgamesh. Oh, you want to test the content of this king's bet? It is nothing more than the winner obeying the loser's words. Gilgamesh said disdainfully. As expected of Gil. That's right, just like that, I used the Heaven Lock and defeated the Quetzalcoatl effortlessly. At this point, Gilgamesh was silent. Because the Quetzalcoatl's divinity is a kind deity, I pulled her to our side. She will be in charge of cleaning up the lone magical beasts in the south and will help us when the magical beasts attack. Gilgamesh had just received the news about the lone magical beast. Gilgamesh had already begun to set up patrols on the main roads of the city. This is still considered good news. Then, did the Quetzalcoatl make any requests? Even if she was a deity, she was still an existence with dignity. Gilgamesh did not believe that she would obey them unconditionally. She only has one request, and that is to let Eric Metropolis hold wrestling competitions at irregular times. Wuming smiled awkwardly. Wrestling competitions? What a strange fellow. This king agrees. Gilgamesh frowned, but still agreed to this strange rule. But, it seems that you have other things to report to this king, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh did not think that such a small matter would make Wuming tired. Wuming was silent for a moment, then spoke. Hey Gil, I think I am dreaming of Tiamat. Chapter 397. Wuming told Gilgamesh about his experience in the dream. It was definitely not a simple dream. Gilgamesh also took Wuming's dream very seriously. This was not the first time Wuming had heard this song. When he was traveling through the void, and when he was dreaming last night, these two experiences, coupled with Wuming's current identity, and that sense of familiarity, made Wuming suspect that it was Tiamat. Although Tiamat is constantly producing monsters, this king suspects that Tiamat has not appeared in Mesopotamia. She is still in the void, Gilgamesh said thoughtfully. Tiamat had indeed been producing monsters, but this did not mean that Tiamat was in the northern mountains. In the original myth, Tiamat was jointly exiled to the interlayer of the world by her children. In the void, Tiamat had been sleeping like this until modern times. Tiamat was awakened by the mastermind behind the fire, and she began to produce monsters to invade the cities in the north. The inaccessible space you dreamt of, coupled with that strange singing voice, it's very likely that Tiamat hasn't escaped. Gilgamesh pondered. But according to what you said, the Quetzalcoatl, Tiamat, and Ereshkigal have met and formed a contract. This does not make sense. Wuming listened to Gilgamesh's words, and he was quite distressed. If the three of them had met, it meant that Tiamat was indeed in the northern mountains. If Tiamat was in the void, why would Quetzalcoatl say that he had met with the other two pillar goddesses? And if Tiamat had really come out of the void, why did she not directly destroy the Uruk? Why did she continue to produce monsters to invade Mesopotamia? I did not ask about Tiamat's appearance. What a blunder! Wuming shook his head helplessly. However, no one would have thought that Tiamat's whereabouts had become a mystery. Tiamat's body was huge. In theory, Tiamat was comparable to a small island. Even if she was hidden underground, it would be difficult to move. Moreover, they had to consider if they could hide her first. In that case, it is very likely that Tiamat's true body did not come out of the void. The one in the north is Tiamat's clone. Due to lack of power, she could only produce monsters to invade the cities in the north. Wuming thought came to the most likely came to his mind. This king thinks so too. Gilgamesh agreed. Speaking of which, the number of demonic beasts in the north is getting more and more. Although they are all red lions, with the passage of time, these demonic beasts have grown a lot. If there were no servants, I'm afraid the demonic beasts would have attacked us. Gilgamesh took out a new mud tablet and opened a new map. The monsters will rest at night. Although some of them look for food at night, it can be said that it is a very safe time to retreat at night. Then, Gilgamesh pointed to the passages between each town in the north to Wuming. This king's soldiers will let some of the residents in the north retreat through these passages every night. Although there are servants to protect them, the efficiency is too low. Wuming looked at the towns in the north. The roads between the towns were uneven. Some of the surviving towns were not only difficult to travel through, but the residents in the towns were women and children. It was difficult for them to keep up with the rapid retreat at night. Moreover, the map showed that some monsters had appeared even near Nippur city. It could be said that the entire north was no longer safe. So far, with the help of the servants, the north wall established in Nippur city has developed rapidly. But if the reproduction speed and quality of these monsters are improved, they will soon break through. Gilgamesh said calmly. The hidden danger in the south has been solved. There is no more worry in the rear. I can restore my real body to deal with the monsters in the north. The most difficult thing to deal with now is the goddess of the underworld, Ereshkigal, in the east. After all, the enemies on the surface were not terrible, but the enemies in the dark were terrible. As the saying goes, it is easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to defend against a stab in the dark. For Wuming and the others, Ereshkigal, who could not come to the surface and could only do things in the underworld, was an incomparable headache. That guy has the ability to pull people's souls into the underworld, and Sumer's god, like me, can't exert my power in the underworld. Wuming was a little distressed. As mentioned before, Ereshkigal could only be born in the underworld. She could not leave the underworld, but she had obtained the power to be invincible in the underworld. As long as the gods were in the underworld, they could not fight against Ereshkigal. This king knows that guy. Although it is a bit unsuitable for her to become the new ruler of the Sumer, but for the time being, she should not do anything. Gilgamesh said the purpose was to make Wuming feel at ease. Then, there is no time to lose. I will go to Elysium first and inform Quizhar, and then I will go to the north. Wuming said, stood up. These things are not urgent. My soldiers are not so weak that they can't even defeat the current demonic beast. Gilgamesh stopped Wuming's action. What happened, Gil? As Gilgamesh's teacher, Wuming naturally saw Gilgamesh's intention to stop him, but he still had other things to say. Actually, according to the news from the north, a hostile servant has appeared, green hair, a perfect face, white clothes. Gilgamesh did not continue, and Wuming naturally knew who he was talking about. Enkidu? Wuming frowned. Even the chains on Wuming's clothes trembled slightly. The other party has the same combat ability as Enkidu. Although this king does not believe it, this king deliberately went to check Enkidu's tomb, and the body inside has disappeared. Gilgamesh said with some annoyance. His good friend's body was stolen, and it was very likely that Enkidu's personality had been replaced. Thinking of this, Gilgamesh felt a burst of anger. I will go and check, don't worry, Gil. Facing such a thing, Wuming was also a little angry. Although this world was a parallel world, Enkidu was still the Enkidu Wuming knew, and his nature would not change. Then, Wuming looked at the clay tablets around Gilgamesh. You should rest early, I will take over these clay tablets for you today. As soon as Wuming said this, Gilgamesh was very unhappy. This king does not need your help. This king can take care of these clay tablets. I don't want future records to say that Gilgamesh is the first king in history to die from overwork. That would be too embarrassing. Wuming looked at Gilgamesh with a teasing smile. Do you think this king can do whatever he wants just because he sealed the Gwaili sword? You're really bold, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh looked at Wuming wantonly. Then give these documents to me, it's not like I haven't taken care of them for you before. Wuming showed a kind smile. Don't mention that to this king, get out of this king's sight immediately. Yes, if this is what King Gilgamesh wants, then I won't say anything else. Humph. You and Merlin are the same kind of people, pay attention to Enkidu for this king, and immediately leave the Uruk for this king and go to the north to support him. Then, Wuming was kicked out of the Uruk by Gilgamesh. Chapter 398. After all, this was Gilgamesh, the most ancient proud king. Wuming could not outlast him. In the end, Wuming was driven out by Gilgamesh. Oh, isn't this Lord Hyunryong? As soon as they left the tower, Merlin's frivolous voice could be heard. On the street, Wuming met Merlin, who seemed to be heading to the tower. As expected, Merlin, sometimes I really need to give you a good punch. Wuming looked at Merlin rather unhappily. Then, Wuming raised his fist. That's bad. I'm not someone who can take a punch from you. Merlin faced Wuming's fist and smiled calmly. I see that you've been running a lot of errands these 2 days, Merlin. Wuming looked at Merlin gloatingly. You're right, King Gilgamesh arranged a lot of things for me. But even so, Merlin still smiled. Speaking of which, I heard that you dreamed of Tiamat? Wuming looked helplessly at Merlin. Needless to say, this guy used clairvoyance again. Wuming did not tell anyone about his dream of Tiamat. As soon as he returned, he told Gilgamesh. The only way Merlin could know about this was through the current clairvoyance. However, since Merlin mentioned it, then there must be something to say. I used clairvoyance to see Tiamat. I don't know why, but there was a black substance that I couldn't see clearly. However, it's very similar to your aura. About that guy in the north, you have to be careful. Because he knew that Wuming was about to go to the front line, he said with a slightly serious tone. That black substance should be the black mud. Back in Britain, Wuming had used his true form, which was accompanied by the unique aura of the Great Origin. Merlin naturally recognized the things that were of the same origin as Wuming. I got it. How are Tachika and the others now? Wuming nodded and asked about Chaldea. Chaldea and the others are working hard to solve the first singularity, but this is interesting. The black and white Saintis somehow reminds me of the dark Artoria. Merlin smiled, but his smile gave Wuming a bad feeling. However, with their speed, I'm afraid they won't be able to catch up with the other singularities. Wuming was a little worried. This is something that can't be helped. In the end, they still have to save their own world. With that, Merlin started walking towards the divine pagoda. Wuming did not say anything else. He had to admit that Merlin was right. Humans needed to save their own world by themselves. Whether it was Wuming, Merlin, or the heroic spirits that had died a long time ago, they were not the main characters. The main characters were humans who were constantly looking for hope in despair. When they arrived outside of Uruk City, Wuming activated his relic, transformed into a giant dragon, and flew into the clouds. Undeniably, flying was a great ability. In addition to Wuming's massive dragon relic, it only took him a day to fly around the entire Mesopotamia. Wuming first went to the southern city of Eridu. There, Wuming told the residents about Gilgamesh's new policy, which was to organize wrestling events at irregular times. Later on, Wuming and Quizhar had a fierce wrestling match. That was right. The entire Eridu could feel the vibrations from their wrestling. As Wuming was more familiar with Wuming, he did not let Quizhar have the upper hand in the wrestling match even though he did not have the upper hand. Hey, I didn't expect Hyunryong to be so talented in wrestling. I'm starting to like you more and more. Do you want to go back to South America with me? Quizhar tempted Wuming with a smile on her face. Of course, Wuming rejected Quizhar. Putting aside how far they were from South America, he did not know if Quizhar would descend in South America. Later on, Wuming instructed Quizhar to do some things. Wuming did not go there to let Quizhar participate in the battle in the north. Instead, he wanted Quizhar to wait for an opportunity and try not to expose the fact that he was no longer working with the other two goddess pillars. After Quizhar said okay, Wuming flew towards the front line in the north. It took almost half a day to fly from the southernmost to the northernmost. In addition, Wuming had started flying from Uruk in the morning. After going to the south and then coming to the north, it was already nighttime. At this time, the magical beasts had already retreated and started to rest. Although they were magical beasts, they still retained the habits of wild beasts. They rested in the wild and hunted for food during the day. However, this was also good. The tired soldiers who had been fighting the magical beasts for a day could also get sufficient rest. Wuming arrived at the city of Babylon. This was the temporary stronghold that Shiro Amakusa had set up. Wuming did not arrive in Babylon with great fanfare. Instead, when he was still some distance away from Babylon, he transformed into his human form and quietly entered Shiro Amakusa's residence in Babylon. "Welcome, Lord Hyunryong." As if he already knew that Wuming would come back, Shiro Amakusa waited for him and then respectfully greeted Wuming. "You don't have to be like this, Shiro Amakusa. Although I am Hyunryong from Uruk, you and I are both servants. You can address me as an equal." Wuming waved his hand. No matter what, the two of them were once enemies who fought to the death. Through Shiro Amakusa's speech, Wuming concluded that he still remembered everything about the 14 horsemen. Etiquette cannot be abandoned. You are the teacher of King Gilgamesh, the Uruk's Hyunryong. Even if you are a servant, you are not the same as us. Shiro Amakusa calmly shook his head. Although I still remember the battle between you and me, the winner takes all. I have nothing to say about my defeat. Shiro Amakusa said with a smile. You are indeed worthy of being called a saint. Wuming praised. It had to be said that Shiro Amakusa was indeed worthy of being called the Saint of the Far East. He spent 60 years on his wish, but it was destroyed just like that. It was useless for him to hate Wuming. Let's not talk about this for now. Actually, there is one thing I haven't had the time to report to King Gilgamesh. Shiro Amakusa smiled casually, then his expression began to become serious. Ibaraki Duji betrayed us. Wuming frowned. Ibaraki Duji's betrayal was naturally predicted by Wuming, but Wuming also asked Shiro Amakusa to keep an eye on Ibaraki Duji. Shiro Amakusa's strength was not high, but he was still very smart. If he could let Ibaraki Duji betray us, then it was very likely that Ibaraki Duji chose to betray us, but he did not help the other side. Am I right? Chapter 399. Shiro Amakusa had been monitoring Ibaraki Dojo. If Ibaraki Dojo went to help the other side, Shiro Amakusa, who noticed that something was wrong, would order the multiple servants present to kill Ibaraki Dojo together, but he was afraid that they would fail. Ibaraki Dojo was the only remaining ghost who was able to escape from the battle with Abe Saimai, Lai Hiroshi, and Watanabe Tsuyoshi. The reason why Gilgamesh couldn't control her with the command seal was because Gilgamesh's summoning method wasn't the standard Holy Grail War summoning method. Therefore, Gilgamesh didn't have command seals on the back of his hand. Then, Shiro Amakusa nodded with a smile. You're right, because Ibaraki Dojo didn't go to the enemy camp. I didn't choose to stop her. Then, Shiro Amakusa pointed to a mountain range not far from Babylon. That guy escaped to the mountain. According to Fuma Kotaro's report, Ibaraki Dojo joined forces with a group of people to become bandit. Don't think that there were no bandits in Mesopotamia. There were always people who didn't conform to discipline, who had no choice but to kill, let alone in this era of more than 2000 BC. Speaking of which, Shiro Amakusa smiled helplessly. She was clearly a powerful ghost, but now she was playing like a child, running to the mountain to become a bandit leader. Wuming was also surprised by Ibaraki Dojo's casual nature after hearing this news. Then let's leave her alone for now. As long as she doesn't cause trouble for us, let her be a bandit leader. As long as Ibaraki Dojo didn't help the monsters, it was fine. Where are the other servants now? Wuming asked. Leonidas is building the north wall with the soldiers. After all, Leonidas is good at defense. Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan are covering the residents in other cities. As for Fuma Kotaro, speaking of which, Wuming and Shiro Amakusa looked at the shadows at the same time. A ninja hiding in the shadows looked at the two of them gently, then closed his eyes. As expected of a famous ninja, he's really suitable for the assassin profession. He's been on standby this entire time. After all, the magical beasts in the wild are all resting, so there's no need for him to gather any information. Shiro Amakusa explained. Wuming nodded and prepared to head out to help Soaring Sky Headquarters and Ba Yuqian cover the retreat of the residents. Then, I'll go and help them. If there's nothing important, that's all. After saying that, a white spear fell out of Wuming's sleeve. The white spear melted into the ground and turned into ripples. The holy green beast walked out of the ripples. Woo woo! Wuming rode on Funbaba, and Funbaba shouted. The ground automatically separated, and green vines appeared, enveloping Funbaba and Wuming. This should be the few remaining cities in the north. I'll look for it myself. There's no time to lose. I'll go first. Wuming's voice came from the vines. Next, the vines entered the cracked ground. Then, the ground closed up, leaving no trace behind. Is this the power of the forest's divine beast, Funbaba? It's quite powerful. Shiro Amakusa praised. I'll have to trouble you tonight. See if you can find the magical beast's lair. Then, Shiro Amakusa looked at Fuma Kotaro. Understood. After saying that, the figure in the shadows disappeared. The magical beasts are getting stronger, and the casualties are increasing. The soldiers are getting more and more tired. We have to speed up the construction of the north wall. With that, Shiro Amakusa returned to his room and continued with Wuming's work. Outside of Babylon, the ground cracked open, and giant vines appeared from within. The vines spread out, and Funbaba and Wuming's figures appeared. Then, the vines returned to the ground, and the cracks in the ground closed up again, leaving no trace behind. This was Funbaba's ability. As a divine beast of the forest, it could still manipulate the vines to move under the ground. But it only did this because it was afraid of affecting the residents of Babylon. Let's go there first. I remember there was a city that survived the attack of the magical beast. After all, Wuming had intelligence. Wuming basically remembered the location of the remaining cities in the north. Wuming's current idea was that if he didn't encounter Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan, then Wuming was ready to cover the evacuation of the people in the town. After all, the magical beasts were decreasing at night. With the cover of 2 servants, they could still safely evacuate. Under Wuming's command, Funbaba began to move. It had to be said that God really took care of Wuming. Wuming chose a city. The city in front of him was indeed the city where Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan covered the evacuation tonight. Not far away, on the main road that connected the cities, Wu Ming saw the light of fire, the gleam of blades and the screams of human beings. This time, it was no longer the red lion Ulidim, but countless blue crawling creatures. The tails of these creatures were high, and the poisonous needles on the tails were shining even in the dark night. Purple venom flowed on the tails as if it was about to drip down. Countless mushufu attacked the migrating humans frantically. Anyone who was stung by the mushufu's poisonous needles couldn't survive, and all of them died of poison. Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan crazily killed these mushufu. Their swords danced, and flames burst. However, against these countless mushufu who only attacked the residents, the effect was like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Funbaba! Wu, under Wuming's order, Funbaba gently stomped its foot. countless vines emerged from the ground and instantly surrounded all the Mushifu and residents. Then, the countless vines seemed to be able to distinguish between demonic beasts and humans. They turned into sharp thorns and penetrated all the Mushifu. In an instant, the whole battlefield quieted down. The survivors simply paid their respects to the dead. Because of the Mushifu's poison, no one dared to touch these corpses. Then, they continued on their way in grief. Funbaba gathered the corpses that had been poisoned, and Wuming used the Lune Rune to burn these poisonous corpses. Of course, the corpses of the demonic beasts were also burned. After all, the poisonous corpses were not easy to deal with, and burying them would only pollute the environment. Okita Soki walked at the front, Bayuzin in the middle, and Wuming at the back. The three divided the work. "Thank you so much, Hyunryong-sama." Bayuzin, who was walking in the middle, slowly retreated to the back and chatted with Wuming. "What happened just now? Didn't you say that the demonic beasts would rest at night? Why are there so many demonic beasts moving at night?" Wuming asked. "We don't know. We didn't find them when we were scouting. Then, countless demonic beasts suddenly appeared. Then you came." Bayuzin was a little sad. After all, it was a sudden situation and many people died. Although there have been demonic beasts attacks before, there were only a few or a small number of them. Today, it was the first time I saw a group of demonic beasts attacking during the day. Bayuzin continued. "Let's cover these residents and return to the north wall first. With Funbaba here, there won't be any problems tonight." "Woo-woo," Funbaba also cried out. "With demonic beast Sama and Hyunryong-sama here, I am relieved." Bayuzin also nodded. In this way, Wuming and the other two covered the surviving residents and arrived at Babylon. Chapter 400. What? A large number of demonic beasts attacked you, and they are a new breed of demonic beasts. Shiro Amakusa looked at Okita Soki and Bayuzin, and said with some surprise. After all, demonic beasts suddenly changed their habits, making it impossible to guard against them, but this was something that couldn't be helped. That is indeed the case, and the crisis was only resolved after I arrived. Wuming stood aside and testified for the two. It's not that I don't believe their words, but the sudden attack surprised me. Shiro Amakusa shook his head, indicating that he didn't doubt Okita Soki and Bayuzin's words. Wuming naturally understood, and then began to analyze the reason for the attack. There are two possibilities. One is that there is a commander among the demonic beasts, and the other is that these new breeds of demonic beasts fight at night. Wuming proposed two possibilities. If there is a commander, the green-haired girl suspected to be Enkidu on the battlefield is very likely to be the commander. Okita Soki remembered the green-haired girl during the day. However, we can't deny that these new breeds of demonic beasts fight at night. Maybe the large number of demonic beasts just now were hatched by Tiamat. Bayuzin also said. In any case, this matter must be taken seriously. Assassin, please tell King Gilgamesh about this. With that said, Shiro Amakusa looked at Fuma Kotaro, who was standing in the shadows without speaking. Although Fuma Kotaro was sent out by Shiro Amakusa to find Tiamat's nest, because of the emergency just now, he used the communication technology to call Fuma Kotaro back. Understood. After that, Fuma Kotaro disappeared in an instant. It seems that he is going to Uruk overnight. Then, you guys go and rest first. I will let Funbaba scout around Babylon to ensure that there are no enemies attacking, Wuming said. They still have to deal with the attack of demonic beasts the next day. If they don't rest, it will be very unfavorable for them the next day. In that case, I will trouble Hyunryong-sama. Afterward, Okita Soki and Bayuzin both retreated to rest. Early the next morning, the demonic beasts would begin to wreak havoc, so they had to rest well. Ruler, I have something to ask you. Once only Wuming and Shiro Amakusa were left in the room, Wuming spoke. Hyunryong, Sama probably wants to ask about the young girl suspected to be Enkidu. Shiro Amakusa smiled. To be honest, I'm not very familiar with that young lady. Saber and Archer have only fought with her for a short while, so I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Lord Hyunryong. Shiro Amakusa's meaning was that they weren't clear on the girl's situation. I see. Sorry to disturb you. I'll leave first. Funbaba is still waiting for me outside. Take care. Then Wuming left the place. In the room, Wuming, who had left the room, had a serious expression on his face. After all, the Enkidu in that world was saved by Wuming and brought to the root to be upgraded. However, the Enkidu in this world did not. Wuming was worried that Enkidu had been modified by Tiamat and was being used by her. Clank, the sound of chains could be heard. The heaven lock that was attached to Wuming's clothes moved automatically and stroked Wuming's cheek. Lil and Wuming touched the chains and took the opportunity to calm down. Wuming came to Uruk through the Holy Grail. Since the heaven lock had become his rider, knight, noble phantasm, Enkidu's consciousness naturally followed him. Wuming Sama, please don't be confused. A gentle voice appeared in Wuming's mind. If I'm really modified by Tiamat in this world, then all you have to do is to defeat me. If someone impersonates my body, then all you have to do is to punish that person. Although it's my body, I believe that Enkidu in this world will agree with what you're doing. The golden chains glowed faintly as they communicated with Wuming through telepathy. I'm not that weak. I'm just a little hesitant. Really, Wuming said with a bitter smile. Don't worry. Your body has done something wrong. I'll punish her properly. You don't have to worry about that. The golden chains rubbed Wuming a few times and then returned to Wuming's clothes. When he came out of the courtyard, Funbaba was lying on the ground waiting. Because of the concealment spell that Wuming had set up, none of the residents noticed Funbaba. Let's go, Funbaba. There's work to be done. Woo-woo, because almost all of the northern cities had fallen, a large number of people were forced to move south. Now, the residents of the northern cities were either dead or had come to Babylon and Nippur. There were very few refugees left in other cities, but just in case, Ba Yuqian continued to search and rescue. The refugees tonight were an example. Now, almost all of the refugees had gathered in Babylon and Nippur, preparing to retreat through these two cities to the north wall that was under construction. Therefore, there were a large number of refugees in Babylon. Coupled with the refugees who had just migrated tonight, Babylon was actually very crowded. If there was a sudden attack by a magical beast in the middle of the night, not to mention the soldiers, these refugees would at least be buried here. Of course, that was in the absence of Wuming and other servants. Wuming took Funbaba to the outside of Babylon. With the activation of Funbaba's ability, countless vines were hidden around the city of Babylon. As long as any magical beast passed by, these vines would have an alarm effect. Not only could it trap the magical beast, but it could also let Funbaba know, so that they could start to defend against the magical beast attack. Tonight, I'll leave it to you, Funbaba. Wuming touched Funbaba's head. Woo-woo, Funbaba replied. Although it was said that he got rid of Funbaba, Wuming was not ready to go to sleep, but he was ready to stay up all night. Wuming looked at the bright moon in the sky and could not help but miss the days with Enkidu and Gilgamesh. At that time, the king was still young, the weapons did not understand the human heart, and the god was still a weak guy. Now everything had changed. The king became very clear, the weapons also understood the human heart and gained friendship, and the god also became strong and had the power to protect others. In the distance, Gilgamesh put down the clay board in his hand and went to the window to enjoy the full moon. I haven't seen the Uruk moon for a long time, as boring as ever, Gilgamesh said indifferently, but his eyes did not leave the moon. In the north, the girl with long green hair looked at the corpse of the magical beast that had been burned to ashes and looked up at the bright moon. For a moment, the girl did not say anything and left here and returned to the northern mountains. Chapter 401. The next day. A night passed, and there were no demonic beasts. Funbaba hid the vines around Babylon in case of emergency. Wuming did not choose to return to Babylon, but stayed outside. Last night, Shiro Amakusa told Wuming that because the demonic beasts were getting stronger and stronger, every time the soldiers resisted, they would suffer a lot of damage. Therefore, Shiro Amakusa began to use defensive tactics. Because Babylon was not suitable for defense, everyone set up traps and various defensive measures in the north of Babylon. The purpose was to resist the attack of the demonic beasts. Now, Babylon's army had been assembled, and the reason why Wuming did not choose to return to Uruk was because Wuming wanted to personally meet these demonic beasts. After waiting for a few minutes, it was time for the demonic beasts to attack. Roar! Hiss! The roar of the demonic beasts could be heard. The red lion and the blue poison-tailed lizard came from afar. Like a group of rushing red and blue sea, the two types of demonic beasts mixed together and attacked Babylon. There are so many demonic beasts, even with the help of servants, they can't stop them. Wuming frowned. After all, such a group of demonic beasts was not something that Shiro Amakusa and the other servants could resist. It seems like what Shiro Amakusa said is true. These days, the demonic beasts have begun to become stronger. After saying that, Wuming got down from Funbaba and began to prepare magic. Although I came as a rider, I can still use Loon magic and Yggdrasil, World Tree, magic. After saying that, Wuming raised both of his hands, one hand drew something, and the other hand lit up a magic circle. Flame, ice, holy light, black fog, vines, water blade, rock, countless low-level magic were cast by Wuming, facing the demonic beasts rushing toward this side. It had to be said that no matter how powerful a magical beast was, it would be akin to a moth darting into a flame if it were to use its physical body to charge at Linley. Roar! Hiss! The magic beast's blood-curdling screams kept echoing as one magic beast after another collapsed, turning into pure mana and disappearing. This might be the price of magic beasts becoming stronger. Ever since the magic beasts started to become more powerful, the magic beasts that died would turn into mana and disappear instead of leaving behind a physical body. However, this was also good. If the corpses were left behind, it would be troublesome to clean up the battlefield. As expected, they're just a bunch of beasts that only know how to kill. They don't have the ability to scheme at all. Wuming said with some disdain. If it wasn't for the fact that there were too many magical beasts, the intelligence of the people in each city would have been enough to defend against them. But this is also good. There's no need to care too much about things like props, Funbaba, Wuming said to Funbaba. Woo-woo, Funbaba responded, taking a step forward and slightly straightening its body. Countless vines broke out of the ground like a huge python, soaring into the sky. Some entangled the magic beasts like a blender, crushing their prey. Some were like sharp blades, piercing through the magic beasts. Some simply tore their prey apart. Fortunately, these magic beasts would immediately turn into pure mana and disappear after death, so there was no need to care about the blood or the piling up of corpses. Although the magic beasts suffered heavy losses, the remaining magic beasts didn't shrink back. As if they didn't know that there was nothing, the other magic beasts still rushed forward one after another. Sure enough, props born for battle. Looking at these magic beasts rushing forward one after another, Wuming shook his head disinterestedly. In that case, all returned to the underworld. Wuming used a more powerful move like a cannon, constantly bombarding the attacking magic beasts. Funbaba also worked harder, attacking the magic beasts in the gaps of the explosions caused by Wuming's skills. It had to be said that the cooperation between the two was perfect. The violent explosions even changed the terrain, creating craters one after another. Countless vines emerged from the gaps between the explosions, creating even more craters and wiping out the lone magic beasts one after another. Soon, countless pits joined together, turning the northern plains of Babylon into a basin. Almost a few minutes later, Wuming and Funbaba stopped attacking. Smoke filled the northern part of Babylon, and countless magic beasts turned into pure mana particles, leaving only the changed terrain, proving that the magic beasts once existed. However, Wuming didn't show an expression that he had finished, but looked at the smoke in front of him solemnly. The number of magic beasts couldn't be this small. There was no doubt that the magic beasts that only knew how to attack temporarily retreated. If that was the case, then there must be something similar to a commander. Could it be? Just as Wuming was worried, a figure walked out of the smoke. Long green hair, a rare beauty, and white clothes that didn't have a single speck of dust on them. Without a doubt, this was Enkidu, who was originally dead. Putting that aside, Wuming sensed a special energy from Enkidu's body. Then, Wuming spoke. As expected, the rest of the magic beasts retreated under your command. Wuming looked at Enkidu with an indescribable expression. Master Hyunryong, long time no see. Enkidu said to Wuming as if they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Don't give me that. Am I worth it? You're not Enkidu. Wuming's expression didn't change at all as he said calmly. As expected, pretending in front of me will definitely get exposed. Enkidu said self-deprecatingly, then showed a proud expression. To be honest, this body misses you very much. I can't help but respect and love you, Master Hyunryong. Enkidu smiled calmly and didn't feel annoyed that he was exposed. Although you're using Enkidu's body, your performance is too different from Enkidu's. I can tell that you're a fake with one look. Wuming said calmly. It can't be helped, I'm just a fake. Enkidu didn't get angry at Wuming's words and replied with a smile. Let me tell you, I'm very angry that I'm using Enkidu's body. Wuming closed his eyes, then suddenly opened them and looked at Enkidu. This gaze made Enkidu tremble with fear, as if he was looking directly at death. A trace of cold sweat trickled down his back. Let's put this aside for now. I'm going to ask you directly, is your heart the Holy Grail? Chapter 402. After hearing Wuming's words, Enkidu quickly retreated and covered her chest with her hands. Although she looked like a young girl who was about to be violated and was trying to defend herself, as expected of Lord Hyunryong, to be able to sense my heart, Enkidu looked at Wuming with extreme vigilance and sneered. As expected, Enkidu's heart is the holy grail of this singularity. However, Wuming shook his head and covered his chest with his hand. You can feel it too, right? My heart is also a holy grail. Wu Ming was based on the Holy Grail that formed the singularity of Fuyuki City. With it as the heart, he formed the Rider, Cavalry, class spirit base. Although Enkidu hid it well, the Holy Grail of the Winterwood City singularity and other singularities were somewhat related. Wuming already felt a sense of familiarity when Enkidu arrived, and only now did he confirm that it was the Holy Grail. Now that you mention it, I feel it too. Enkidu also looked at Wuming's chest, and could vaguely see a Holy Grail that was beating like a heart. Since you already know, I can only leave, Enkidu said as she prepared to leave. But the moment she turned around, she stopped and looked at Wuming. As mother's child, and with the feelings of this body, I don't want you to die. Let me give you a piece of advice, Lord Hyunryong, give up on the humans and join our side. After saying that, Enkidu began to retreat. At the same time, countless monsters appeared behind Enkidu to provide cover. Wuming did not chase Enkidu and let her leave. Funbaba walked in front of Wuming and protected Wuming behind him. Although there was no need to protect him with his master's ability, he couldn't allow these small fries to harass his master. Funbaba released its vines to kill the magic beasts that were rushing over. The magic beasts were not afraid of death, and resolutely continued to charge. Wuming stood behind Funbaba and watched Enkidu disappear into the crowd of magical beasts. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, a gentle voice sounded. "Aren't you going to stop it?" Wuming's golden chains made a sound. "There's no need for that. Even if we eliminate this singularity now, that guy will definitely find a way to send us another Holy Grail." Wuming shook his head. "Besides, that's your body, so I can't really do it." Wuming smiled embarrassedly. "Master Wuming, you're really gentle." The chains shook gently and then became silent. "Well, it's time to clean up these items," Wuming said and joined the slaughter of the magic beast. Later, with the cooperation of Wuming and Funbaba, the magic beasts that gathered in the north of Babylon were all killed. After that, Wuming rode Funbaba toward the north, but the magic beasts seemed to be scared and almost disappeared. In the afternoon, Wuming rode Funbaba back to Babylon. After being welcomed by the excited people and soldiers, Wuming entered the meeting hall of the servants. Leaving Funbaba in the huge open space outside the meeting hall, Wuming walked into the meeting hall. Clap, clap, clap. As soon as Wuming entered the meeting hall, he heard the sound of applause. As expected of the patron saint of Uruk, the teacher of the ancient king, the great and mysterious figure known as Hyunryong. Then, Shiro Amakusa's flattering voice came. "With the help of Hyunryong-sama, we will be able to destroy the magic beasts," Ba Yuzan said with a voice like that of Yamato. "Well, Hyunryong-sama is as reliable as Takaka-san and Kondo-san, no, more reliable than them," Okita Soki said with a smile. "You must be referring to the bravest man in the world. It's hard to believe that if there was someone like you in the battle at Hot Spring Gate, the outcome would have been different than mine," Leonidas, whose face was hidden by the helmet, said. However, Wuming just smiled at these praises, then shook his head. "You must be joking, those magic beasts are just some miscellaneous soldiers. They are all the inferior mass-produced children of Tiamat's magical beasts. They can't even be considered as living creatures, they can only be regarded as tools. If the real Tiamat's magical beasts appear, I'm afraid they won't be weaker than the servants." Wuming didn't get carried away by the praises of the servants because he knew that these magic beasts were just simple miscellaneous soldiers. They relied on their numbers to gain an advantage. Even Shiro Amakusa and the others had no problem killing these magic beasts if they had an unlimited supply of magic power. Of course, in addition to the magic power, there was another point. Shiro Amakusa and the others were there to protect the people, not to attack the enemy, so there was no need to be like Wuming. More importantly, the number and variety of magic beasts is likely to increase again. With Tiamat's continuous optimization of magic beasts, the magic beasts may become stronger and stronger. In the later stage, whether it's the number or quality of magic beasts, I'm afraid that a single servant can't kill them alone," Wuming said slightly solemnly. The others also realized this problem, and their faces were full of seriousness. About this problem, King Gilgamesh has already sent news. At this time, Shiro Amakusa spoke. "Last night, Mr. Fuma went to Uruk overnight and conveyed the news of the current front line to King Gilgamesh. Then, King Gilgamesh made a plan overnight and asked Mr. Fuma to bring it back." On the other side of the meeting hall, Fuma Kotaro appeared from the shadows as if to confirm Shiro Amakusa's words. Shiro Amakusa took out the information that Fuma Kotaro handed in last night. King Gilgamesh's new order is for servants to put down their work and help speed up the construction of the northern wall. Move the people who stayed in Babylon and Nippur to the back of the northern wall as soon as possible and complete the magic beast front. Shiro Amakusa read the content on the clay board. But who will resist the magic beasts here? There are also the people who survived in the cities. There are also a few cities that we have confirmed that there are still people left, Okita Soki said with some confusion. In this regard, before Shiro Amakusa could speak, Wuming laughed first. I will defend the front line alone, including the rescue of the remaining people. The other servants and soldiers will go to the northern wall. Is that what King Gilgamesh said? Wuming said with great certainty, as if he guessed Gilgamesh's meaning. Shiro Amakusa laughed. As expected of Hyunryong Sama, the king's teacher. That's right, for the time being, Hyunryong Sama will take over the defense of the front line, and the rescue work will be the same. King Gilgamesh said in the letter, "This king's teacher is there, you can let him take over. This is how teachers are used at this time. Don't worry, he is much more useful than you." That's what King Gilgamesh meant. Shiro Amakusa finished reading. What a cruel king. He actually let his own teacher take over. If he was in the Shinsengumi, he would definitely be resisted. Okita Soki said with some helplessness. Well, but Hyunryong Sama is indeed more useful than us. It is a great honor to be able to get the help of Hyunryong. Leonidas smiled casually at Gilgamesh's ridicule in the letter. Then, let's do it this way. Some of you will cover the residents of Babylon and Nippur to leave here. Some of you will go back to the northern wall to help build the wall. I will defend the front line. Ruler, tell me the location of the remaining people in the cities. I will go and save them. Well, then let's do it this way. Chapter 403. Soon, Shiro Amakusa told Wuming the location of the city with the remaining citizens. The servants were divided into two troops. One went to the north wall to build the wall, and the other escorted the citizens to evacuate. The army was also divided into two groups. One group followed the servants to the north wall and went to build the north wall. The other group stayed behind to escort the citizens. Later, Shiro Amakusa, Leonidas, and Fuma Kotaro led the army to the north wall to help build the defense. Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan were arranged to cover the evacuation of Babylon and Nippur, and the army was also divided into two troops. It felt like he was taking care of the girls, cough cough. After that, Wuming also left Babylon. It seemed like the demonic beasts were afraid of Wuming and Funbaba. Wuming left Funbaba behind, and he went to the city with the remaining citizens that Shiro Amakusa said to rescue. When night came, Wuming returned to Funbaba alone. Funbaba didn't lie down to rest this time, but he was walking around like a patrol. "How is it, Funbaba? Is there anything unusual?" Woo-woo, hearing Wuming's question, Funbaba shook his head and said twice, indicating that there was nothing unusual. "Is that so?" Wuming already understood why there was nothing unusual. In the towns that Wuming went to, there was no one left. At that time, Wuming checked the city, and the traces of the demonic beast's invasion were quite obvious. Wuming carefully searched the town, but Wuming didn't find any living people, not even corpses. Except for some blood on the ground, only the panicked town was left empty. It seemed that the rest of the people were dragged to the nest by the demonic beast. With his own speed, Wuming quickly checked all the towns in the north. Wuming discovered something. No matter who it was, there were very few bloodstains. Currently, there were no magical beasts with mouths big enough to swallow a person whole. Since that was the case, there was only one possibility. Although it's inconceivable, those people should have all been transported back to their nest by the magical beasts. Wuming said with a grave expression. And why did the magical beasts transport those people back to their lair? Serve as food reserves? To become nourishment for Tiamat? Serving as nutrients for the production of other magic beasts? Although it was cruel to say this, but they had already entered the lair of the magical beasts, and the magical beasts could do whatever they wanted. Woo-woo, Funbaba lowered its head and rubbed against Wuming to comfort him. Although I'm not in a good mood, I'm more worried about one thing. Wuming patted Funbaba, indicating that he wasn't worried, and then continued. Say, do you think those people will be transformed into demonic beasts after they've been captured? This sentence made Funbaba a little stunned. I don't think that Tiamat, who can produce so many demonic beasts, needs nourishment, and I don't think these demonic beasts will bring people back just to store food for their own kind. Then, Wu-ming smiled casually. Of course, I'm just guessing, and it's very possible that my guess is wrong. Although he said this, Wu-ming's smile immediately became calm. And that person using Enkidu's body, she must be related to Tiamat. To be able to steal Enkidu's body without anyone noticing, it must be that person or his 72 subordinates who did it. But since they were able to entrust the Holy Grail to them, act together with Tiamat's demonic beasts, and tell me that they are both children of the same mother, there is no doubt that she must be related to Tiamat, and their relationship is not shallow, Wu-ming said with certainty, and then began to think about who the real person in Enkidu body was. Wu-Wu, looking at the frowning Wu-ming, Funbaba stepped forward and pushed the unprepared Wu-ming to the ground, and then pressed its huge head on Wu-ming's body. Wait, Funbaba, what are you doing? Being pushed down, Wu-ming was startled, and his thoughts jumped out of his thoughts. Wu-Wu, Funbaba ignored Wu-ming's question, and continued to act like a spoiled child, constantly rubbing against Wu-ming. But little did he know that with the huge Funbaba rubbing against him like this, Wu-ming couldn't take it. I know, I won't think about it anymore, get off of me first. Wu-Wu. After a short period of disturbance, Wu-ming got rid of Funbaba's spoiled child. Then, it was already evening and the sun had set. Really, don't jump on me in the future, your head is bigger than my body, how can you just jump on me like that? Wu-ming sorted out the disturbance caused by Funbaba, and said to Funbaba somewhat helplessly. Wu-Wu, Funbaba sat there obediently, like a child who admitted its mistake. Well, I'm not blaming you, be careful next time. Seeing the listless Funbaba, Wu-ming was amused, and then quickly comforted Funbaba. Wu-Wu, after being touched by its master, Funbaba showed a happy expression. For a moment, Wu-ming sat on Funbaba, and Funbaba carried Wu-ming slowly towards the north. Wu-ming looked at the endless plains in the north, as well as the mountainous fir forest in the northwest. There was no doubt that the magical beasts had come from there. Speaking of which, the fir forest seems to be your territory, Funbaba. Wu-ming suddenly remembered that Funbaba used to live in the fir forest. Wu-Wu, Funbaba's huge head nodded. Its current state was like having a home that it couldn't go back to. Well, but you actually don't care, right? Wu-ming just smiled at this. Funbaba didn't care about its residence, and the fir forest was just a good forest, so Funbaba settled there. Wu-Wu, Funbaba was very happy. After Funbaba had Wu-ming as its master, it was very happy to follow its master. Looking at the lights of Babylon behind him, Wu-ming asked Funbaba, "Have the vines been set up?" Wu-Wu. Because Wu-ming needed to defend against the attack of the magical beasts alone, Funbaba began to set up vines underground when Wu-ming went to look for survivors during the day. Don't think that Funbaba was really just strolling. Very good, then now we just have to wait for the magical beasts to attack. I have a hunch that the magical beasts will attack tonight. Wu-ming said seriously. Although it wanted to complain about how its master knew, Funbaba didn't ask for a rebuff, anyway, it just followed its master. After that, until almost dawn, there was no movement on the plains, not even a bird or a rabbit could be seen. It's coming. Chapter 404. Coming. After Wu-ming said that, Funbaba raised its head and looked ahead. The night in Mesopotamia was dark. If there was no light, it would be hard to see. Countless red dots appeared in the forest of fir trees in the distant mountainous region. Those were the shining eyes of demonic beasts at night. Of course, the degree of danger was the same. On the plain in front of Wu-ming, there were many red dots. Looking at the number, there were more demonic beasts than during the day. Roar! Accompanied by the charge and roar of the demonic beasts, the earth began to tremble. If these demonic beasts really rushed over, perhaps all the citizens of Babylon and Nippur would suffer. Did all these demonic beasts come out? Does Tiamat want to start a full-scale war now? Wu-ming said seriously, his tone was puzzled. Starting a war first was not good for either side. The human side that had not yet established the North Wall would suffer heavy losses, but Tiamat, who was in the northern mountains, would also lose the protection of the demonic beasts. The servants could form a surprise attack force and go straight to the root of the problem. With so many demonic beasts coming, coupled with the tremors on the ground, Babylon, which was currently closest to the north, must have noticed. After all, since there was an example of a demonic beast attack at night, whether it was Babylon or Nippur, they had sent more people to guard the night for fear of a sudden attack by demonic beasts. Don't worry about that, Funbaba, raise the vine wall. Wu-ming had no time to study those things. The most important thing now was to stop the attack of the demonic beast. Funbaba understood and walked forward for a distance, then its huge feet gently stomped on the ground, like an earthquake. Rumble, a green wall rose behind Funbaba and Wu-ming. Taking a closer look, it was a wall made of vines. The vine wall was oriented from east to west. That's right, it was the same as the north wall. However, compared to the north wall, the vine wall made by Funbaba was very weak. Because it was made in a hurry, the most it could do was to resist the attack of the magical beasts tonight. If the magical beasts continued to attack without any external interference, a hole would appear in the vine barrier when it was almost dawn. When the sky was completely bright, the vine barrier would completely collapse. Of course, if Enkidu had come, the outcome would have been different. The vine barrier might not even last for a moment. This was the reason why Wu-ming and Funbaba were outside the vine barrier. They wanted to stop Enkidu from destroying the vine barrier and reduce the number of monsters as much as possible. Wu-ming got down from the Funbaba and walked to the front of the Funbaba. One man and one beast stood there. Although they were facing thousands of magical beasts, they did not panic at all. Then, let's begin. Let's party all night. As he spoke, Wu-ming's hands began to move non-stop. Lines of lune runes were drawn by Wu-ming's hands. Each lune rune seemed to be able to find a matching lune rune. They began to combine and attack the magical beasts in the distance. Funbaba was not idle either. It controlled countless vines to rush out from the ground and attack the magical beasts that were rushing towards them. Countless lune runes appeared in Wu-ming's hands. Together with the vines that kept coming out from the ground, they strangled the magical beasts that were rushing towards them. Although the magical beasts were almost in front of Wu-ming, if this was the extent of it, then the magical beasts that came out in full force tonight would be annihilated. And Wu-ming didn't think that there would only be magical beasts attacking. And now, Wu-ming once again proved how accurate his intuition was. Without a doubt, it was Enkidu. As for Wu-ming, who currently possessed extremely high divinity, once he was entangled by Enkidu, he would not be able to move for a short period of time. The enemy also saw this point and used Enkidu. At the same time, a golden chain extended from Wu-ming's body and wrapped around the silver chain. This was an action initiated by Wu-ming's Enkidu consciousness. Wu-ming did not participate. Walala! The golden chain and silver chain entangled with each other and let out ear-piercing sounds. As expected, Sir Hyunryong, the chain on your body is Enkidu. At this moment, Enkidu's voice sounded from the magical beasts. Enkidu walked out from the magical beast. The area around Enkidu was like a forbidden zone where no magical beasts dared to approach. As expected, you're the only one who can use Enkidu. Wu-ming was relieved. There were only two Enkidu in this world. One was Gilgamesh's, but Gilgamesh's Enkidu had always been sealed in the treasury. The other was naturally Enkidu's body. As a god-made armament, Enkidu could transform into Enkidu. Therefore, only the person using Enkidu's body had Enkidu's Enkidu. Wu-ming's Enkidu naturally came from Enkidu in the parallel world. Like an ill-fated relationship, Enkidu in this world and Enkidu in the parallel world converged. The silver chain extended from Enkidu's sleeves, and the end was connected to the golden chain. Don't even think about harming Sir Wuming. At this moment, Enkidu heard a voice through the golden chain. Enkidu was startled. That voice was not unfamiliar to Enkidu. It was a voice that Enkidu was extremely familiar with. It was the same voice as this body's. So that's how it is that the real Enkidu received the real Enkidu's voice through the connection between the two chains. At the same time, the golden chain transmitted some other information to Enkidu. In that instant, Enkidu saw a lot of things, heard a lot of things, and even felt a lot of things. Damn it! Enkidu was shocked and immediately put away the chain. The golden chain did nothing to stop it. Almost at the same time, the silver chain returned to Enkidu and the golden chain returned to Wuming. Enkidu closed one of his eyes and painfully covered his other eye with one hand. Sir Wuming, as expected, you're more skilled. Be careful, Mother will personally take action. Enkidu said painfully and then disappeared among the monsters. Without a doubt, Enkidu had retreated. Just as Enkidu finished speaking, the ground began to shake even more violently than before. Chapter 405. Wuming and Funbaba couldn't care less about killing the demonic beasts that were already charging towards them, because the ground in front of them had already undergone an unprecedented change. On the boundless plain, the earth began to crack from the center, and then the entire earth was completely torn apart. Then, a huge figure appeared from the earth. The figure was more than 100 stories tall, with an incomparably huge snake tail, sharp and terrifying claws, a body and face covered in scales, and a head full of ferocious snake hair. Its huge eyes flashed with a dangerous scarlet light as it stared at Wuming and Funbaba, who were like ants in front of it. Boom! Funbaba replaced Wuming to clean up the surrounding demonic beasts a little, and Wuming, who was free, looked at this prehistoric giant beast. This familiar feeling, this divinity, it's actually Tiamat? Wuming looked at the snake hair goddess in front of him with some surprise. However, Wuming could clearly recognize that the snake hair goddess in front of him was a Greek demonic beast, Medusa, who devoured 2 of her sisters, and transformed into an Avenger demonic beast, Gorgon. A Gorgon that was given Tiamat's personality, but to be honest, it's really a good match. Wuming didn't panic in the face of danger, and instead, he smiled. But then again, Enkidu actually said, not long after Enkidu retreated, it was a little too honest, wasn't it, Funbaba, you should retreat. Wuming said to Funbaba, who was continuously killing the demonic beasts around him and working hard. Woo-woo! Funbaba naturally shook its head, and then rubbed its head against Wuming. All right, I'll take care of it. These vines still need your protection. You should know that there are countless lives behind these vines. Be a good girl. Wuming gently stroked Funbaba's head, persuading her with both logic and emotion. Woo-woo! Funbaba was silent for a few seconds and then nodded. Good child, so obedient. Wuming smiled gently at Funbaba. Then, Funbaba released one last attack to repel the surrounding demonic beasts. Then, Funbaba left this place through the vines and went to the interior of the vine barrier. Okay, now I'm the only one left. Wuming looked at the giant demonic beast Gorgon. However, Gorgon didn't answer Wuming's question, either because it didn't know how to speak or because it didn't want to. Instead, it directly launched an attack. The countless snake heads on Gorgon's hair opened their mouths and gathered magic. Then, countless snake heads shot out heat rays, burying the place where Wuming was, including the demonic beast. Rumble! A powerful explosion occurred. The dust and flames of the explosion covered Wuming's figure, and Gorgon stopped moving. Really? What a warm greeting, fake Tiamat. Wuming's voice came from the smoke. Who? A huge white dragon claw came out of the smoke, like a dragon out of the clouds, and stretched towards Gorgon at an extremely fast speed. Gorgon was shocked and immediately controlled the snake hair to intercept it. Hiss hiss hiss. As if its target was the snake hair from the beginning, the dragon claw grabbed the snake hair and tore it off. Gorgon let out a scream that didn't belong to a human. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Are you satisfied with this greeting gift of mine? A calm voice came. A huge dragon emerged from the smoke caused by the explosion as if it had come out of a small space-time tunnel. The pure white dragon god had shining dragon scales, holy dragon horns, and white dragon wings that were twice the size of its body. Its holy dragon claws were still holding on to the struggling broken snake hair. Then, a white flame burned the snake hair, completely incinerating it. Gorgon spoke. Damn Hyunryong! Gorgon's hoarse voice came out of his throat like a broken bellows. As long as I'm here, don't even think about going back alive today, fake Tiamat. Just like that, the huge snake hair monster and the sacred dragon of protection started a confrontation in the plains in front of Babylon, a city in the north of Mesopotamia. The battle between mother and son in Mesopotamia had begun for the second time. Uruk City, Divine Tower. Because Mesopotamia was mainly plains, Gorgon, who was more than a few hundred stories tall, and Gorgon, who was only as tall as Wuming, appeared near Babylon. They were seen by the entire Uruk City, which wasn't far from Babylon. Tiamat. Gorgon. Gilgamesh looked at Tiamat and fell into deep thought. King Gilgamesh, king! Then, Siduri's voice came from the stairs of the Divine Tower. Siduri rushed to the highest floor of the Divine Tower where Gilgamesh was in a slight panic. King, Lord Hyunryong, he, humph. Idiot, of course this king saw it, Gilgamesh said disdainfully. Since Gilgamesh saw it, the Uruk citizens naturally saw it as well. King, the citizens are very uneasy. Some of them have already lost their minds. Siduri calmed down and said. The citizens were uneasy because of the confrontation between Tiamat, who was the mother goddess, and Hyunryong, who was the direct descendant of Tiamat. The existence of the mother and son confronted each other. This rebellious battle of gods caused everyone's worldview to collapse slightly. Moreover, Tiamat's deterrence toward the ordinary people made the citizens even more fearful. That's why this king said that humans are foolish beyond compare. The battle of the gods is not something that humans can stop. They can only witness it and pray for it. Hyunryong is protecting this king's citizens. The foolish citizens should pray for Hyunryong and pray for Hyunryong's victory. Gilgamesh was even more disdainful now. After speaking to Siduri, Gilgamesh turned around and looked at Gorgon and Hyunryong. He did not say anything else. Siduri did not ask any more questions. She crossed her arms and began praying to Wuming. Lord Hyunryong, you must win. Shiro Amakusa, Fuma Kotaro, and Leonidas were trying their best to rush to Babylon. It would not be long before Babylon, which was within the range of the two great gods' attacks, would be affected. They had to evacuate the population as soon as possible. Is that Tiamat? What a terrifying avenger! Shiro Amakusa did not stop walking as he spoke seriously. Lord Hyunryong's body is also quite shocking. He's almost on par with Tiamat's body. It's truly astonishing. Leonidas praised from the side. Only Fuma Kotaro remained silent. However, his increased speed showed his respect for the two great gods. Let's speed up. Otherwise, the remaining citizens of Babylon will be finished. With that, the three of them increased their speed again. At this moment, Wuming and Tiamat began the second round of confrontation after the first battle. Chapter 406. In order to protect the vine barrier behind him and the city of Babylon, Wuming blocked all of Gorgon's attacks during the transformation process. Then, Wuming completely revealed his true body. Wuming's body shouldn't be comparable to Gorgon's, but Wuming's magic power could not withstand Wuming's growth. The so-called dragon form was a noble artifact, but it was also a rider rank. Wuming's body could naturally catalyze it. Wuming catalyzed his dragon body to a size that, although not as large as Gorgon's, was enough to contend with him. Although it could accelerate the growth of his body, it was almost at its limit. If he continued to catalyze his body, his rider rank spirit base would shatter. Therefore, Wuming chose to stop growing his body. Wuming knew that with his and Gorgon's figures, if they were to fight here, Babylon behind Wuming would definitely be affected. The north wall not far from Babylon was likely to collapse. I have to leave this place and move the battlefield to an uninhabited area in the north. Thinking of this, he opened his mouth and condensed his dragon breath. Hiss! Gorgon's torn snake head had regenerated. Countless snake heads opened their mouths like Wuming, condensing heat rays in their mouth. Accompanied by the dragon's roar, Wuming's dragon breath was condensed and sprayed towards Gorgon. Hiss! Countless snake heads were not to be outdone. They hissed and shot out rays from their mouths to meet Wuming's dragon breath. Hiss! The pure white dragon breath and the purple-black heat ray fought against each other, making a sizzling sound. There was neither an explosion nor any other reaction. It was as if the two forces were balanced. However, a mere monster was no match for a holy dragon. The holy dragon breath gradually suppressed the heat ray and pressed towards Gorgon. Damn it! Gorgon once again made a hoarse sound like an old bellows. Then, the dragon breath hit Gorgon and knocked him to the ground. Boom! His snake hair billowed as Gorgon's huge body lay on the ground, causing another earthquake. Now! Wuming fiercely flapped his wings and flew into the sky with a large amount of gravel on the ground. After circling in the sky for a while, Wuming swooped down and grabbed Gorgon with his claws. It had to be said that a huge body brought great strength and endurance, but in terms of agility, it was a big disadvantage. At this moment, Gorgon was like this. Gorgon was knocked to the ground by Wuming's powerful dragon breath, but after all, Gorgon's endurance was super high. Because of the effect of the skill transformation magic, Gorgon's endurance had reached A++ level. Pure dragon breath could not harm Gorgon, so Wuming changed the dragon breath into an impact attack aimed at Gorgon's body and successfully knocked him to the ground. Although he had the same agility as Wuming, if Wuming's speed increased, Gorgon would not be able to react in time. The mysterious Lune rune wrapped around Wuming's huge dragon body. At this moment, Wuming's agility had surpassed rank A. Wuming successfully grabbed Gorgon before Gorgon could get up. However, Wuming did not want to harm him. Bang! Wuming's two huge dragon claws grabbed Gorgon's two hands. The Lune rune appeared again, and the strength of rank B instantly surpassed Gorgon. Wuming flew up with Gorgon. That's right, Wuming wanted to change the battlefield. However, in the face of a huge existence like Gorgon, it was not convenient to divert its attention. Therefore, Wuming chose to change the battlefield. He directly used his advantage as a flying dragon to grab Gorgon and fly. It had to be said that this was a bold and stupid method. How stupid! Gilgamesh looked at Wuming flying north and Wuming carrying Gorgon as he frowned and scolded. Not to mention whether Gorgon would attack Wuming in the air. Even if he carried Gorgon that weighed more than 10,000 pounds, Wuming's spirit base would not be able to handle it. No matter which one it was, the final battle after reaching the destination would be disadvantageous to Wuming. Lord Hyunryong. Siduri closed her eyes, no longer looking at the disappearing dragon figure, and silently prayed. It had to be said that Gilgamesh was right. In the sky, Wuming, who was flying north, was already being attacked by Gorgon. Although Gorgon's hands were grabbed by Wuming's dragon claws, Gorgon did not rely on its hands to attack. Gorgon glared angrily as countless snake hair tore at Wuming's body. Traces of blood flowed from Wuming's body. The blood dripped onto the ground, leaving a special mark. After all, this was Hyunryong's body, not the body of the origin dragon. Therefore, Gorgon with Tiamat's body could cause damage to Wuming. At this moment, if one looked carefully, one could see that there was a trace of electricity passing through Wuming's body, and a trace of gray appeared on the dragon's scales. That was the demon eye, a gemstone-grade demon eye of petrification that could petrify all enemies. After all, it was Medusa's cursed growth state, so it was normal for it to have the legendary Medusa's demon eye of petrification. Although Gorgon had used the magic eye on Wu-Ming from the beginning, Wu-Ming, who had A+ holy aura and A+ magic power ability, was extremely resistant to the magic eye of petrification, so the magic eye of petrification did not have much effect. Got to say, the demon eye of petrification was really a killer move. For example, Anna dealt with Demudo, and the demon eye of petrification had a fatal effect. However, it was somewhat useless to use it on Wu-Ming. In this position, it's about time. Wu-Ming ignored the damage on his body. After seeing that they were far enough away, Wu-Ming let go of Gorgon's dragon claws. At the same time, Wu-Ming widened his enormous dragon mouth, instantly condensed dragon breath, and sprayed it at the descending Gorgon. Boom! The dragon's breath hit Gorgon, who had fallen to the ground like a huge meteorite. There was a huge roar on the ground, causing a large amount of smoke and dust. The smoke was in the shape of a mushroom cloud, spreading and covering Gorgon's body. Wu-Ming flew in the sky, relying on his strong durability and lune runes to recover himself. He looked at the mushroom cloud below sternly. And just as Wu-Ming looked down solemnly, laser-like rays shot out crazily from the mushroom cloud at an extremely high frequency. Wu-Ming waved his body to dodge. Because of the sudden arrival, one of the rays brushed past Wu-Ming's wings. Sizzle! Wu-Ming's wings emitted a sound as if they were being burned, producing carbonization and black smoke. It's different from the previous attack. Wu-Ming frowned. Then, the laser beam stopped, accompanied by a hurricane. Gorgon pushed away the smoke and stared at Wu-Ming with scarlet eyes. As expected, you are an unstable factor that must be eliminated. Chapter 407. Sure enough, you are an unstable factor that must be eliminated. Gorgon spoke again, but this time her voice was not as hoarse as before, like a broken bellows, but a normal female voice. Wu-Ming flapped his wings, landed on the ground from the sky, and looked at Gorgon quietly. Neither of them attacked again. In Wu-Ming's view, since the other party spoke, then she must have something to say. Then are you going to destroy me? Just because you're a fake Tiamat? Or you see that you can't beat me, so you want to rope me in? Wu-Ming mocked back disdainfully. It had to be said, if Tiamat was the real body, Wu-Ming really couldn't beat her in his current state. However, if it was just a goddess Gorgon who had Tiamat's personality, Wu-Ming wasn't afraid. So far, Gorgon had only shown one ability of Tiamat's personality, and that was 100 Beasts Mother Fetus, an ability that was used to produce magical beasts. If that was really the case, Wu-Ming could solve the magical beast crisis now. Back to the main topic, Gorgon saw Wu-Ming land and continued to speak. I don't want to be obsessed with Tiamat's identity, but since I was given Tiamat's divinity, then I have to replace her and do something that she couldn't do. Gorgon's snake hair swayed unusually calm. Destroying the children that abandoned her, this was what Gorgon said she had to do. Don't tell me you don't have thoughts of revenge. Wu-Ming continued. Through taking revenge on humans to express your anger of being betrayed and treated as a magical beast, isn't this the main reason why you came as an avenger, Goddess Gorgon? Wu-Ming mocked as if he saw through Gorgon. At first, the problem of Tiamat gave Wu-Ming endless trouble, and Wu-Ming kept thinking about this problem. It wasn't until Gorgon appeared that Wu-Ming understood. Tiamat was indeed awakened, but for some reason, Tiamat refused to come to the modern world, and then Gorgon inherited Tiamat's divinity and was summoned as Tiamat. After all, although Tiamat was abandoned and exiled by her children, she was willing to do so. Therefore, Wu-Ming could understand why Tiamat refused to appear in the modern world. Wu-ming wouldn't belittle this great maternal love, but Gorgon, who was given Tiamat's divinity as a fake Tiamat, made Wu-ming extremely disgusted. To be honest, Gorgon, I really hate you. I hate that you pretend to be Mother Tiamat. However, Wu-ming's words made Gorgon angry. Is that so? I originally wanted to cooperate with you, but it seems impossible. This was probably the reason why Gorgon spoke in a normal way in this uninhabited place. It was impossible from the beginning. I am Hyunryong, the Uruk Hyunryong who protects the world. Facing you who wants to destroy the human race, we can only fight. Wu-ming shook his head. However, I don't need your permission to cooperate with me. Gorgon smiled terrifyingly. Boom! The ground was instantly torn apart, and huge black pythons appeared from the ground under Wu-ming's feet without warning, instantly entangling Wu-ming. What? Wu-ming looked at these huge black pythons entangling him with some surprise. However, Wu-ming wasn't surprised by the attack, but by the power contained in these black pythons. Those were the power of the same origin as Wu-ming. The black snakes formed from origin power. So that's how it is. If you are Tiamat, you can indeed use this power. Wu-ming said with relief. Wu-ming once had a dream where he heard Tiamats singing in a dark space where it was difficult to move. After dreaming of Tiamat, Wu-ming had been worried about the black origin soil in that space. Wu-ming didn't think that the black origin soil had nothing to do with Tiamat. And now Wu-ming was certain that Tiamat could use the black origin soil, and it wasn't strange that Gorgon, who had Tiamat's personality, could use the black origin soil. This is bad. Although Wu-ming said it was bad, his tone didn't sound bad at all. Be assimilated by the black soil and become my dependents. Gorgon laughed wildly. Tiamat's power, the Sea of Life. As long as someone was eroded by the black soil from the Sea of Life and dragged into the Sea of Life, they would definitely be assimilated by Tiamat and become a part of her. And these black snakes were an incomplete use of the Sea of Life. With Wu-ming's current ability, once he was dragged into the Sea of Life, his body's spirit base would definitely be assimilated, and he would become Tiamat's son again, the god closest to Tiamat. After all, with the black soil infused with the power of the origin, it could be said that there was nothing it couldn't control. However, if he wanted the power of the other party's origin, he had to use the power of the origin. And it just so happened that Wu-ming had the power of the origin. Boom! The power of the origin in Wu-ming's body erupted, instantly breaking through the black snake's bindings and scattering them. Then, Wu-ming immediately flapped his wings and flew into the sky. It had to be said that Gorgon couldn't fly, which was one of Wu-ming's great advantages. To be able to break through the Sea of Life's bindings, as expected of Hyunryong. Gorgon was slightly surprised. After all, in the knowledge he had been given, this was the first time an existence had been able to break free from the Sea of Life despite being bound. However, since you chose to break free from the bindings, it means that the Sea of Life still has an effect on you. In that case, we just need to increase the amount. As Gorgon spoke, he raised his hands, and his snake hair danced. Giant black snakes appeared from the ground, looking at Wu-ming in the sky. This is rather similar to Athena. Wu-ming looked at Gorgon controlling the black snakes and thought of Athena in the Godslayer world. Athena used her own dark energy to form black snakes to attack. Athena. Gorgon's face was filled with anger. After all, according to the legends, Medusa was cursed by Athena, and then turned into a demon, devouring her two sisters and becoming Gorgon. Gorgon was naturally furious at Athena. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless black snakes rushed toward Wu-ming in the sky, and Gorgon released divine heat rays on the ground. Wu-ming was facing a formidable enemy. He tried his best to dodge the heat rays and the black snakes, and from time to time, he used dragon breath to attack the black snakes and Gorgon. The dragon breath could destroy these black snakes, But every time Wuming attacked Gorgon, there would always be black snakes appearing to help Gorgon block Wuming's attacks. Seeing this, Wuming's heart sank. This is really bad. Chapter 408. Wuming, who had transformed into a Hyunryong dragon, was unprecedentedly powerful in terms of physical strength and magic. After all, the Uruk Hyunryong was Gilgamesh's teacher. However, after using the Sea of Life, Wuming would not choose to fight Gorgon in close combat. After all, there were too many black snakes, and it seemed like there was no limit. These black snakes were not enough to corrode Wuming, but if there were too many of them, Wuming would not be able to move and would be at the mercy of others. It was like the relationship between water and fire. The black snakes were fire and Wuming was water. Fire could not envelop water, so the black snakes could not bind Wuming. However, if there was enough fire, the water would be evaporated, leaving nothing behind. In simple terms, if Wuming was really injected into the Sea of Life, then he would definitely be forced to leave. However, Wuming's spirit base would be recorded by the Sea of Life, and more Hyunryong would be produced. That would be terrible. Therefore, Wuming could only choose to capture the leader and kill Gorgon first. Then, he would need to attack from afar. However, Wuming's long-range attacks were useless. Whether it was his own dragon breath or the loon's magic attacks, they would all be blocked by the black snakes. Gorgon also knew that Wuming would choose to attack him. Gorgon would not let Wuming's plan succeed. There were more than 10 black snakes around him, and once they were reduced, they would immediately replace them. Then, there was only one way left: kill all the black snakes around Gorgon, then kill Gorgon and force him to leave. Wuming's huge eyes emitted a cold gaze. Wuming had considered killing both the black serpent and Gorgon, but killing Gorgon with the black serpent as a shield would be difficult. Gorgon's durability was A++. To put it simply, it wasn't easy to die. But now, it was surrounded by black snakes that were both spears and shield. The difficulty was simply too great. However, Wuming had an idea. "I'm going, Gorgon!" Wuming roared as he charged at Gorgon. Hiss! Countless black snakes rushed towards Wuming from all directions, including countless heat rays that could cause true damage to Wuming. The attacking black snakes had to be destroyed. After all, those things were quite difficult to deal with. As for the heat rays, he would try his best to dodge as many as possible. If he couldn't dodge them, he could only defend against them, even though he couldn't defend against them. Wuming kept dodging one heat ray after another, destroying one black snake after another. His body was getting smaller and smaller. Of course, this was Wuming's intention. After all, moving forward with so many attacks, it was still advantageous to be small. However, Wuming didn't dare to change back to his human form. Not only would all his ability points drop by 1 level, but without the protection of the dragon scales, Wuming's defense would also be greatly weakened. Although Wuming had almost given up on defending, when he was very close to Gorgon, Wuming's body had shrunk to his initial size. Compared to Gorgon, he was almost a quarter of Gorgon's height. "You're giving up, are you prepared to walk into a trap, Hyunryong?" Gorgon said mockingly. Although that was what he said, Gorgon didn't think that Hyunryong would commit suicide. He must have some plan. Gorgon instantly controlled countless black snakes to surround Wuming and rush towards him. "That's good. What a coincidence. I said I was going to commit suicide." Wuming smiled. Then, the loon runes on his body lit up. That was the original 18th loon. "Okt Yuji Odin! How dare you!" In an instant, with the release of the noble phantasm real name and Gorgon's surprised voice, Gorgon and Wuming's eyes fell into a white light. Rumble! In the distance, Uruk. Gilgamesh looked at a 7-colored energy pillar that rose into the sky and smiled. What a pleasant battle! This time Gorgon lost. In front of Babylon, the vine barrier. Woo woo, Funbaba looked at the seven-colored light pillar worriedly. Funbaba, who had a connection with his master, could sense that his master was in a bad situation. Babylon City, Nippur City. A few servants who were nervously moving the crowd between the two cities also saw the seven-colored light pillar and were stunned. Not only that, but the citizens who wanted to take advantage of the time when Wu-Ming took Gorgon away were also stunned. They stared blankly at the scene. As expected of Hyun-Ryong-sama, he can actually do this. Shiro Amakusa praised. In the seven-colored light pillar, a huge source of power was the main body. The power of fire and frost complemented each other. The heavy earth and the light wind complemented each other. It was rare that the active life and the silent death did not corrode each other. This was the real great god's seal. It gathered all the power of the Lune runes that Odin sacrificed one of his eyes. It was reproduced in Mesopotamia by Hyun-Ryong, who replaced the Uruk. As for the problem of the noble phantasm, because Okdu Odin was a magic spell on the level of a noble phantasm, there was no reason why Silent Moon, who could use all the runes of Rune, would not be able to use it. After all, Wu-Ming was not a servant that could be judged by the normal servant rules. Ah! Gorgon's scream came from the light pillar. After a while, the seven-colored light pillar disappeared. The smoke produced by the great god's seal almost covered the entire northern battlefield, making it impossible to see the battlefield clearly. The great god's seal, which contained the source of power, destroyed all the black snakes, including the black snakes beside Gorgon. Gorgon was naturally not left behind. He was burned by the great god's seal. The powerful great god's seal had an effect on Gorgon. At this moment, Gorgon's snake hair was destroyed. His scales were falling off. There was not a single part of his body that was intact. Blood was spurting out. Gorgon's huge snake tail was lying on the ground powerlessly. He was also weakly supporting himself on the ground with his hand. Gorgon, who used the Sea of Life's authority, also had the aura of the black mud in his body. Wu-Ming's source of power that restrained each other was contained in the great god's seal. There was no doubt that Gorgon's foundation was damaged. If it wasn't for the fact that it had a durability of A++, and that Gorgon was at the edge of the attack of the Okdu Odin, Gorgon would have disappeared in the colorful light just now. That guy, is he crazy? Gorgon panted slightly and sighed. The reason why Gorgon said that was because of the power of this move. Yes, Gorgon's foundation was damaged and he was about to die. However, what would happen to Wu-Ming, who had imprinted the origin of the 18 Lune on his body and detonated it? Without a doubt, the answer would be to leave. This was also something that Gorgon did not expect. Wu-Ming would risk the consequences of leaving to detonate himself and die together with him. Uruk Hyun-Ryong, I admit that you won this time. Gorgon closed his eyes and said lightly. However, your plan did not succeed. Even if you hurt me like this, give me a few months and I will be able to recover. Without the Uruk, you can only wait to die. Gorgon suddenly opened his eyes. A scarlet light flashed. I'm sorry, I haven't left yet. A voice came from the surrounding smoke. Then, a golden chain wrapped around Gorgon's neck and pulled him to the ground. Chapter 409. How is this possible? How did you survive that level of explosion? Gorgon lay weakly on the ground. His tone was abnormally terrified. After all, even without the power of origin, the Okdug Odin that had been planned for a long time was enough to blast Gorgon half to death. And how could Wu-Ming be fine in the center of such an explosion? You're right, I couldn't have survived the explosion just now. Wu-Ming said lightly, then walked out of the smoke and dust to Gorgon. The moment Gorgon saw Wu-Ming, he was relieved. Wu-Ming had already returned to his human form from his dragon form, and seemed to be fine. However, that was only possible if one ignored Wu-Ming's transparent body and the holy grail that was exposed in his heart. caught the power of the Holy Grail and barely survived. Gorgon grabbed the golden chains that bound him. At this moment, Gorgon looked extremely weak, and after a few movements, he gave up. Wu-Ming, who should have left, didn't. That was because he caught the power of the Holy Grail and forced himself to stay here. But looking at Wu-Ming's appearance, he probably wouldn't even last a minute before leaving. A minute was very short, so short that Gorgon couldn't hold on, but a minute was also very long, so long that Wu-Ming could kill the weak Gorgon in a minute. The current Gorgon was at the end of the light crossbow. No, perhaps not even at the end of the light crossbow. Even if Wu-Ming was about to disappear, Wu-Ming's current state could be said to be the final radiance of the setting sun. It should be known that the final radiance of the setting sun was everyone's strongest moment. In this short period of less than a minute, it was enough for Wu-Ming to kill Gorgon. As expected, this is the end of my road. Gorgon gave up struggling. Like a curse being suppressed by heroes, this was the unchanging end of the path for demons. You don't have to be like this, Gorgon. Wu-Ming looked at Gorgon and shook his head. There's no need for you to play the role of Tiamat. You're Gorgon, no one else. How can you win if you run away and deny yourself? I hate people like you who run away. Wu-Ming explained why he hated Gorgon so much. Is that so? I see. Gorgon finally understood before he died. Wu-Ming looked at his body. It would disappear in a few seconds. I don't have much time left. Since you've already understood, then go in peace. After Wu-Ming finished speaking, he raised his left hand that was not holding the chain. His left hand instantly transformed, and an incomparably huge dragon claw appeared. This was the effect of Wu-Ming's noble phantasm. The claw that was condensed with magic power clawed at Gorgon's chest, where the spirit core was located. However, just like in dramas, as long as the opponent was given an explanation before he died, he would definitely lose. Just as Wu-Ming's huge dragon claw was about to pierce Gorgon's heart, the silver chain instantly wrapped around Wu-Ming's dragon claw and Wu-Ming's body. Mother! Are you alright? Enkidu suddenly appeared and shouted nervously. You're in luck, Gorgon. Wu-Ming's body began to disappear from his feet. The golden heavenly lock that was binding Gorgon also turned into light spots and disappeared. Ah, that's right. I have an underling who cares about my mother. Gorgon was no longer obsessed with Tiamat's identity. Gorgon slowly got up and looked indifferently at Wu-Ming, who was about to disappear. Enkidu did not know why, but he also looked at Wu-Ming. Through his eyes, Wu-Ming could see that he did not have the heart to do so. You've won this battle. In the following days, I won't come out of my temple in the north until I fully recover. Wu-Ming pursed his lips helplessly. Gorgon would not be able to recover from the damage caused by this battle without a few months. If she dared to show up, she would be attacked by the other servants. If Gorgon was seriously injured, the servants summoned by Gilgamesh would be able to kill her. I will only send out monsters. I will not appear in person. Consider it your reward for winning. After all, Gorgon had her dignity. She would restrain herself if she lost. However, the one who died was not her, but the winner, Wu-Ming. Therefore, Gorgon would not give up on invading the Uruk. As you wish, Wu-Ming said indifferently. After Wu-Ming finished, Gorgon left toward the north, leaving Wu-Ming's head and Enkidu's head behind. Looking at Enkidu, who did not leave, Wu-Ming opened his mouth. Although I don't know who you are, I can see that you are not a bad person. It's just that your standpoint is different. Wu-Ming smiled at Enkidu. Enkidu was somewhat flustered and blushed. If it's possible, I hope that you can take care of this Holy Grail. Wu-Ming finished speaking and completely disappeared. Clang. The Holy Grail that was located at Wu-Ming's heart fell to the ground. Enkidu thought for a moment, then walked to the place where Wu-Ming disappeared, picked up the Holy Grail, and left. The city of Babylon and the city of Nippur were in the midst of population transfer overnight. Because of the commotion caused by Wu-Ming and Tiamat, people were not in the mood to sleep. Coupled with the monster crisis, people were constantly moving people under the arrangement of the servants. Because the monster horde and Gorgon attacked in the middle of the night, it was almost a few hours before the battle between Wuming and Gorgon ended. Shiro Amakusa stood on a tall building in the city of Babylon, which had almost completed its population migration, and looked at the battlefield where Wuming and Gorgon had settled down in the distance, and did not speak for a long time. Did Hyunryong win? Leonidas appeared behind Shiro Amakusa and asked Shiro Amakusa. Shiro Amakusa nodded and then shook his head. Hyunryong won, but he also left. Gorgon lost, but he is still alive. This was what Fuma Kotaro said after collecting information. In fact, in the current situation, Wuming undoubtedly lost. Now, almost all the servants who saw Gorgon's real body knew that it was not Tiamat who gave birth to the monster, but Gorgon who got Tiamat's personality. Let's go, the north wall is almost finished. It's time to retreat. Then, the three of them left Babylon. Nippur was the same. After Okita Soki and Ba Guzan finished guiding the residents of Nippur, they looked into the distance. Hyunryong Sama failed. Okita Soki said in a low voice. However, knowing that Tiamat is actually Gorgon is quite important. Hyunryong Sama's sacrifice was not in vain. Ba Guzan said firmly. Let's go, it's time to return to the north wall. Uruk, Tower of God. Siduri stood unnaturally beside Gilgamesh, assisting Gilgamesh in handling government affairs. It's almost time to recover, Siduri. Gilgamesh suddenly said. Yes. I'm sorry, King Gilgamesh. Siduri said apologetically. Hyunryong is not dead. It's just a clone that died. Gorgon was seriously injured. Now we have the advantage, so cheer up. Gilgamesh reprimanded. Yes, King Gilgamesh. It's just that I don't know where the Holy Grail is, I have to find it as soon as possible. Gilgamesh said to himself. Then, the sun rose. A new morning sun. Gilgamesh did not know what he was referring to. Looking at the rising sun, Siduri's heart was also active. Hyunryong had done a lot for Mesopotamia, and the rest was left to them. Inside the root, the huge root dragon opened its eyes. Chapter 410. Within the root, Wuming opened his eyes. I forgot about the variable using Enkidu's body. The Heaven Lock is very effective against me. After all, Wuming's Rider-class clone had extremely high divinity. Even if he had used brute force to break free, Wuming's spirit base would have been destroyed. I'm sorry, Lord Wuming, I didn't help. Enkidu's voice sounded. Wuming looked at the chain on his arm. Of course not, little Enkidu. Didn't you win effortlessly against the Quetzalcoatl? As for the end, you were focused on restraining Gorgon, so it's understandable that you didn't notice the other Heaven Lock coming. After all, an injured beast was the scariest. It was hard to guarantee that Gorgon wouldn't recover before death. That was why Enkidu had used all his strength to restrain Gorgon and didn't use another chain to deal with the other Heaven Lock. Also, we've done enough. Let's leave the rest to Gil and the others. Don't forget that Tachika and the others are also working hard. Don't worry too much. Wuming laughed like an optimist. Looking at Wuming like this, Enkidu felt a little helpless, but he didn't say anything. As long as you're happy, Lord Wuming. Enkidu's tone was light. As long as Lord Wuming didn't feel like he was a burden, it was fine. At this moment, Wuming, who was inside the root, sensed something outside. Did those guys become active because of the influence I caused in Mesopotamia? Wuming opened a lens in front of him, and countless black substances rushed over. Naturally, it was the root black soil that was attacking from outside. But if they only rely on numbers, they're like moths to a flame. How strong was Wuming now? Before coming to the origin, Wuming was no longer afraid of the origin black soil. Now, Wuming had stayed in the origin for quite some time. For Wuming, who could absorb the power of origins to strengthen himself, being inside a great origin was the same as entering a device that could endlessly increase his strength. Wuming sat on the platform at the center of the great source and closed his eyes. In an instant, a blinding white light shot out from Wu Ming's body, penetrating the origin as if it was nothing. The white light penetrated the origin and went outside. Like the exterior of the universe's great origin, countless pieces of black mud surged forward one after another, like the surface of an ocean in the midst of a storm. However, when the pure white light came into contact with the source of the black mud was like a flame that had come into contact with water and was instantly extinguished. Countless black origin mud were constantly swallowed and destroyed by the pure white light. However, the black origin mud seemed to know no fear and continued to surge forward. It didn't take long for the surging black mud outside the great origin to be completely destroyed. The space outside the great origin regained its mystery and tranquility like the universe. I have to say, if the black origin mud had attacked me while my consciousness was shifting to the servant's clone, the defensive device I set up would have been useless. Then, Wuming looked at the back of his dragon claw, which had a black dragon-shaped imprint on it. Crackle crackle, a bolt of lightning streaked across the back of Wuming's dragon claw and erased the black dragon-shaped imprint. Wuming had already memorized the world coordinates of the singularity, so he no longer needed the black imprint. The black dragon-shaped imprint was also responsible for the black origin mud's attack, which was why Wuming chose to dispel it. In that case, Kalas, stay behind and help me manage these defensive tactics, in case those things attack me again while I'm asleep. If a large amount of black origin mud attacked here while Wuming's consciousness was in the servant's clone, it would be really troublesome. If he chose to stay behind to solve the problem, it was very likely that the great origin would be attacked, and Wuming's foundation would be affected. After all, Wuming still needed the power of the great origin to grow. If Wuming decisively dispelled the servant's clone, the great origin would be saved, but the problem in the servant's world would not be solved, which would be terrible. In other words, if Tachika Fujimaru was in a life-threatening situation, only Wuming could save her. What should he do if the great origin was attacked by the black origin mud? Wuming couldn't make the decision to abandon Tachika Fujimaru, but he had to ensure that the great origin was absolutely safe, which made him very conflicted. Because of that, if Kalas stayed behind and controlled the defensive tactics, Wuming would be able to safely carry out his tasks in another world. Understood, Master. Kalas indifferently replied. Kalas naturally understood this principle, so she immediately agreed. Kalas flew down from Wuming's head, turned into a machine that acted like a central device, and landed inside the great origin, on the platform that Wuming was lying on. The platform was very large, and Wuming's shrunken body didn't take up much space. I will help Master guard the house. A screen appeared on the device, displaying what looked like an electrocardiogram. As Kalas spoke, the electrocardiogram began to jump. Even if she didn't understand, she had to accept it. Solving problems for her master was her duty as the master's magic attire. Well then, Enkidu will continue to follow me this time. Wuming then said to the chain on his dragon arm. Yes, Enkidu said excitedly. Pfft. Kalas spat out in displeasure. After a while, the shadow of a dragon left the great origin. But don't misunderstand, that wasn't Wuming's main body. Wuming's main body was sleeping inside the great origin. The shadow of the dragon that flew out of the great origin was a true clone created by Wuming. After all, the body of a servant was still a bit weak. It would be fine if it was a powerful class, but Wuming always became a class that was disadvantageous to him for various reasons. Therefore, Wuming created a true clone of himself. Using the power of the great origin, relying on Wuming's wisdom, and Wuming's own body as the blueprint, he created the Origin Dragon mini-machine. Just like the male version of the Gilgamesh doll made by Wu Ming, he put his consciousness into it and transferred his consciousness into it. Although this Origin Dragon mini-machine was a puppet, it was closer to the servant's spiritual base. After all, it was a product of the Great Origin. How could it be like an ordinary puppet? That was why Wu Ming completely put his consciousness into it. This Origin Dragon mini-machine had all the abilities of Wu Ming's main body. However, whether it was the Sword of Salvation, the 12 incarnations, or the Origin Dragon's characteristics, this body could use them all. However, no matter what ability it was, its power was reduced a lot, but it was still better than a simple servant's body. Wu Ming was going to use this body to go to the singularity where Tachika and the others were now and help them break through all the singularities as soon as possible. After all, this was a disaster that endangered Ilya world, and it was better to solve it as soon as possible. Wu Ming came to the long-lost space-time tunnel, and controlled his body to wander inside. Just as Wu Ming was about to enter the singularity where Tachika was, Wu Ming heard a voice. God-sama, if there is a God-sama among humans, why didn't he show up to save us? This sentence contained many emotions: hatred, hope, numbness. Wu Ming was attracted by these emotions, stopped moving, and thought, is this the strong longing of other worlds received by my body? Wu Ming thought for a while, then gave up entering Tachika's world, and turned to the place where the voice came from. Interesting. Hating the gods yet hoping for the gods? What kind of world is this? Let me take a look. Wu Ming opened the space-time portal of that world and went in. Chapter 4:11. The sky was dark and gloomy. Endless thick fog and dark clouds covered the sky, and not a single ray of sunlight shone on the earth. The land was desolate. It was either cracked land or land full of strange plants. In short, it was a tragic sight that was unbearable to look at. It was desolate everywhere. Disgusting. This was the sigh of the white dragon that had just come out of the space-time tunnel. Wu Ming could feel that everywhere was filled with dead silence. The land had lost its vitality, the sea had dried up, the sky was covered, and the air was filled with an unpleasant smell. All of this was nauseating. Wu Ming flew in the sky, looking at the world that looked like the end of the world, and fell into deep thought. Wu Ming did not need to visually estimate. Through the attributes of the atmosphere and the current state of the earth, Wu Ming could tell that the entire world was probably covered in dark clouds and smoke. No wonder there was such a sad sigh. It would be strange not to be sad living in such a world. Wu Ming shook his head. I'm afraid it's an unknown world. I'd better use some concealment tactics on myself first. With these thoughts, Wu Ming mobilized magic power, and then he found that there was no magic power in this world, but there was another kind of energy. Not magic power? This is really interesting. Wu Ming laughed. The worlds that Wu Ming had been to before were all worlds with magic power, but this world did not have magic power, but another special power, which attracted Wu Ming's attention. However, this is not difficult for me. Several tactics appeared and covered Wu Ming's body. The tactic that blocked detection was successfully used by Wu Ming. Then, Wu Ming looked around, found a place to land, and flew over. Boom! In a natural cave, a ball of white flame burst out from inside. Plop! A huge corpse that looked like a multi-legged centipede fell to the ground, then turned into dust and collapsed. Really, why is there danger everywhere? Is there no safe place in this world? Wu Ming's voice was heard. Wu Ming extinguished the flame on his hand and walked into the cave. At this moment, Wu Ming was wearing a black hooded cloak. After entering the cave, Wu Ming took off the hood and then looked around the cave. I have to say, this giant centipede is really neat. I was thinking if it was like that tentacle-like thing's place was full of mucus, or if it was like that bear-like thing's cave was full of feces and skeletons, then I'd have to change places again. Wu Ming said with some relief. Then, Wu Ming sat down in the cave. As for why Wu-Ming came back here, it had to start from the moment he landed. After Wu-Ming landed, he recovered his human form. After all, it was a weakened version of the power of the root, so it was natural that he could turn into a human. Then, Wu-Ming began to look for a place to rest. After a few twists and turns, he finally found a decent place. During this process, Wu-Ming discovered that there were things that Wu-Ming didn't know about almost everywhere on the ground. Poisonous flowers, black dust that could corrode flesh, an atmosphere that made it difficult for living creatures to survive, and various monsters. At the thought of those things, Wu-Ming had a headache. If humans can survive here, we'll be thankful to the heavens and earth. As for why Wu-Ming could use magic in this world without magic. After all, Wu-Ming was a dragon of the root, a noble and mysterious existence born from the root. And all worlds were born from the root, so it wasn't hard to understand why Wu-Ming could use the energy of other worlds. This power is quite interesting. As he said that, Wu-Ming extended a finger. Specks of golden light appeared on Wu-Ming's hand, and slowly condensed into a ball of light. Wu-Ming controlled the ball of light to move, and then returned to his finger. Energy with life, how interesting! Wu-Ming dispelled the ball of light, and the ball of light turned into energy and dissipated in the air. As the name implied, these energies had life, but they wouldn't die. After these energies were used up, they would come to the atmosphere, and become part of the atmosphere's energy. Let's not talk about that for now. In such an environment, can humans really survive? Wu-Ming sighed. After all, the environment of this world was a little too harsh. However, regarding whether or not there were humans, Wu-Ming only expressed his opinion with a sigh. There must be humans alive. Putting aside the fact that Wu-Ming was attracted by a certain human's words, humans weren't creatures that would perish easily. But if that's all, how could humans be forced to this point? Wu-Ming said, somewhat puzzled. If it was really only the threat that Wu-Ming saw just now, then with the wisdom of humans, Wu-Ming didn't believe that they couldn't deal with it. And at that moment there was a roar. Boom, boom! The cave Wu-Ming was in was directly buried, and Wu-Ming was buried alive. Outside, a huge dragon was flying, facing off against a group of beings that looked like robots. The robots that looked like humans flew in the sky as if they were on standby, waiting for the dragon to attack. Roar! The dragon roared at the group of beings that looked like robots, and then a dragon's breath condensed in its mouth. Boom! The dragon's breath exploded at the robots, making a huge roar. That's right. It seemed like this was the culprit that caused the cave to collapse and bury Wu-Ming. The powerful dragon's breath shot at the group of flying robots. No matter how one looked at it, these robots couldn't possibly withstand it. However, these robots moved. A circular magical formation was cast by many robots, blocking in front of these robots. Then, the dragon's breath sprayed on this translucent magical formation. Immediately after, the dragon's breath was easily diverted by the magical formation like a ray of light shining on a mirror. An incomparably terrifying dragon's breath swept across the surrounding area, causing a series of explosions. Boom! Yes, I'm afraid that the dragon's breath will attack the cave Wu-Ming is in. These robots will be helpful too. Roar! As if seeing that its attack was diverted, the dragon roared angrily. Damn it! You bunch of scrap metal! A huge roar came from the dragon's mouth. Attack refraction complete. Target confirmed. Dragon spirit begin annihilation. The robot flying at the front of the group of robots was like a leader, muttering. The robots stretched out their hands, and magical formations appeared from their hands as if they were ready to annihilate the so-called dragon spirit in front of them. The leader robot spoke. Pseudo-canon. At that moment, Wu-Ming's voice was heard. I see. It's because of your existence that humans can't survive. Chapter 412. Who's there? The giant dragon looked around and roared vigilantly. The robots that were ready to attack also stopped moving and waited while scanning the surroundings. Just a traveler, don't worry about it. A voice suddenly came from the middle of the dragon and robots, and Wuming's figure appeared there. What? When did you appear? I didn't even notice you? The giant dragon said in surprise. In his perception, the place where Wu Ming was located did not have the slightest energy fluctuation. It was like a mass of air. This was the effect of Wu Ming's shielding technique. Not only was there the magic of Yggdrasil World Tree, but there was also the magic of Loon magic. The auxiliary magic of Yggdrasil World Tree was quite powerful. Without special skills or tools, it was impossible to detect it. Although the robots didn't look surprised, judging from the weapons they raised, these robots were also very vigilant. Scanning. There is no information about this person in the database. Unable to determine his race. Temporarily determined to be an unknown species. Current status unknown, suspected to be hostile, the robot leader said in a cold tone. Forget about this group of Kikai species. Which race are you from? Do you want to poke your nose into my business? The giant dragon said in a rather irritable tone. Because it could not see the details of the enemy, it was even more irritable since it was already released from prison. Even the robots with the database could not find out Wu Ming's identity, let alone this giant dragon. Is this world divided into forces by race? The two sides are called dragon and Kikai species. Wu Ming looked at the giant dragon, then looked at the robots. Through the information exchanged between the two sides, Wu Ming also understood their race. The giant dragon was the dragon, and the robots were called Kikai species. It was a very appropriate and simple name. Do you think I wanted to? I was obediently waiting in the cave over there. You guys buried me with an explosion, so I had no choice but to come. Wu Ming pointed at the cave that had turned into a pile of rubble, and said helplessly. Speaking of which, I need some information. I wonder who can provide it to me. Just treat it as an apology. Wu Ming maintained his smile as he looked at the giant dragon and Kikai, waiting for their reply. This group has no reason to provide you with information. This group refuses, said the leader of the mechas. Even so, the group of mechas didn't make any other moves. They only maintained their defensive stance. However, for these Kikai species, as long as they didn't attack them, they wouldn't retaliate. However, to the arrogant and hot-tempered dragon elite, the colossal dragon elite, who thought highly of themselves and had to hand over information just because they provoked them, the colossal dragon elite thought, who are you? Do you want to die? If you want information, you'll have to survive my attacks first, roared the colossal dragon. Then, it opened its mouth and countless energy that was different from magic power gathered in it. Then, it shot it at Wu Ming. The scorching dragon's breath was shot at Wu Ming. The surrounding air had begun to distort due to the high temperature. Perhaps even steel would be melted by the dragon's breath. To be able to defend and reflect this attack, it seems that these Kikai species are not to be trifled with. Wu Ming looked at the Kikai species that didn't move and thought in his heart. Then, Wu Ming looked at the attack that was coming at him. However, in the face of such a powerful attack, Wu Ming didn't do anything. Boom! There was a big explosion at Wu Ming's position, because the speed of this attack was really, to Wu Ming, too slow. Wu Ming's voice came from behind the colossal dragon. What? How is that possible? The colossal dragon was in disbelief. Although the Kikai species' faces didn't change much, their eyes that were constantly producing data also exposed their inner situation. This was the effect caused by Wu Ming using the Phoenix incarnation that was activated in an instant to teleport. However, because the body wasn't the original body, the duration of the Phoenix incarnation was reduced to 1 second. However, 1 second was enough for Wu Ming. Then, it's my turn. Wu-ming smiled slightly and then began to chant. Seeing Wu-ming chanting, the colossal dragon was very disdainful. For the dragon spirit race that had extremely high magic resistance, if it wasn't the forest spirit race that was best at using magic, there was no need to pay attention to other people's magic. But I am the strongest and the one who holds all victory in my hands. No matter if it's a human or a devil, I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. Seeing Wu-ming, who was just chanting, the colossal dragon felt a sense of crisis. It can cause me harm? And when Wu-ming finished chanting, the colossal dragon felt that something was wrong. I must stop him. The colossal dragon's inner alarm bell rang. When Wu-ming was chanting, the colossal dragon attacked. Die! The colossal dragon roared, and turned around to wave its giant claws at Wu-ming. For the dragon spirit race that had extremely high physical fitness, in addition to using magic, its physical strength was also super strong. Except for a few races, almost no one of the races could take a claw from the dragon spirit race. However, when the dragon spirit race swung its claws at Wu-ming, Wu-ming raised his fist that was quite young for the colossal dragon. However, it was this hand that gave the colossal dragon an even more incomparably dangerous feeling. Because this body was weakened, Wu-ming was prepared to add a strengthening spell. You have shining yellow. Well, forget it. It would be troublesome if I accidentally killed you. However, after thinking for a while, Wu-ming stopped the strengthening spell. Just like Wu-ming said, it would be troublesome if he killed it directly. Wu-ming still needed information. Wu-ming's words naturally reached the colossal dragon's ears, but this made the colossal dragon even angrier. The colossal dragon swung its claws even faster. Then, the colossal dragon's claws collided with Wu-ming's fist. Generally speaking, when a huge figure that was hundreds of meters tall faced a weakling that was less than 2 meters tall, the weaker side would lose. However, Wu-ming wasn't a weakling, but a super strong one. Boom! The colossal dragon that collided with Wu-ming's fist was slammed into the ground, leaving a dragon-shaped groove on the ground full of gravel. How is this possible? The colossal dragon that fell into the groove of the ground, its bones were broken, some were even shattered, and it was almost unable to move. It said slowly in an unbelievable tone. Then, the colossal dragon fainted. The unknown new species has a few powerful brute force. It is not recommended to face it head-on. Temporarily retreat. The leader of the mech armors analyzed and said. Then, a diamond-shaped space opened behind these mech armors, and the mech armors began to retreat. Did I say you can go again? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.